It's Thursday, October 30th, 2025, and this is the Education Committee meeting of the Council Rock School District. I'm going to chair tonight. My name is Gyota Pali. Please state your name and position starting to my left.
Thank you, Ed Tate, School Board.
Andrea Mangold, Director of District Communications.
Michael Roosevelt, School Board.
Andy Senko, Superintendent.
Nicole Crawford, Director of Elementary Education.
Good evening, Al Funk, Director of Secondary Education.
Bob Hickey, School Board.
Al Oberman, Director of Special Services.
Linda Stone, School Board.
Tracy Osecki, School Board.
Matthew McCarthy, Tech Integration.
Nicole Khan, School Board.
Tammy Gary, Supervisor of Curriculum Instruction.
And Ms. Horner, you're on the phone?
Hello, Ann Horner, School Board.
Great, thank you. So we have a really full and really interesting things on the agenda. Is Crawford gonna, or Mr. Fan?
Mr. Funk.
I'll start off. And this is a friendly reminder that for reliable, accurate, and up-to-date information about our district, please refer to resources, websites, and social media platforms managed by the Council Rock School District. While individuals may post content of their choosing, not everything, shared on social media is accurate or based on complete information, and at times it can be misleading. We want to ensure that the information you receive and the sources you trust are truly rock solid. We encourage the public to verify information on social media and be discerning in where they obtain information relating to Council Rock. If you question what you are seeing, need clarification, or want a reliable fact check, please contact the district directly. Our contact information is available on our website at www.crsd.org. Okay, we're good, Matt? Okay, just a quick overview of tonight's agenda. Ms. Tammy Gary, our Supervisor of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, is with us tonight to provide an update on structured literacy and speak about the training that continues to take place in the areas of LETRS and Aspire. Tammy will also be discussing with us the work being completed in the realm of multi-tiered system of support, commonly referred to as MTSS. And then finally, Tammy will give the committee a sense of our assessment calendar for the 25-26 academic year. Next up, Dr. Oberman will provide a special services update, including the process of cyclical monitoring and an update on CPAC, which stands for, as you well know, Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Ms. Andrea Mangold will review the timelines associated with the district's comprehensive plan, and a plan which will ultimately take place from 2026 until the 2029 school year. Next, I will give a general overview of MBIT, Middle Bucks Institute of Technology, which is our CTE, Comprehensive Technical Education Program, where we have a number of high school students taking advantage of that outstanding program. And then lastly, we will wrap up with some open dialogue around the topic of audits. So that is our agenda for this evening. And with that, we'll kick things off with Ms. Gary and structured literacy.
Good evening, everyone. If you don't mind, I'm going to stand so I could see the slides and also see you as well. So our first area that we're going to discuss tonight is structured literacy. As you know, we have been putting together a plan over the last 2 years, and we're really starting the implementation for it. So giving you the updates for this year, the plan's completed and it is added to the district website. And I believe at another meeting, we're going more in depth with the things on the website, but the whole plan we put there instead of creating a PDF document. Again, as I spoke to you last time, that being on the website allows people to look at it in different languages. So it's going to be put, it is there now. The big thing that we're working on right now is the Structured Literacy Initiative for Professional Learning, and we're going to have other slides in a few minutes to talk about that. We're also creating a crosswalk between structured literacy and MTSS, which is foundational skills. Also looking at interventions and enrichment and how everything fits together in the plan. In the training with structured literacy, we're also putting that together with inclusion in the grade level planning. Structured literacy is based on foundational learning, and those standards are in kindergarten, first and second grade. So as the teachers are developing the curriculum, we're merging everything together. And then looking at the measures of success, how are we going to judge that this initiative was successful? So we're looking at what data to pull in and then how to analyze as we go through the process.
I'm sorry, you want us to do it? I'll do it, you just tell me when to click.
Thank you. So now diving into the professional learning, so just giving you some background of the process we went through for action planning. We identified a continuum of learning for staff because it's encompassing many different certifications and grade levels. We did the process of selection of the resources, looking at multiple different vendors, looking at different types of programs. Then through that process, we had to go through the budget process, get all the approvals, set up the planning, create the calendar, and then started onboarding for the teachers with use of technology and programming. Right now, where we are is the communication and implementation of these programs. The big kickoff is November 4th, our in-service day. That's our really big first day, although we have some smaller things taking place before then. Again, looking at the measures of success based on data analysis, how are we going to show that this endeavor is successful? And then creating a sustainability that this isn't just our 2-year plan, how we continue it with our literacy goals throughout. So from here on forward, the plan to always have literacy goals every year, and what does that look like? So sustainability is major. So at the bottom are just the kind of marketing icons, I guess you could say, for Lexia and the different programs we're using. So I'm going to briefly go through these. There's a lot written up here, but we're also going to be posting this to the website as well. The first part was really building the leadership, because the leadership has the vision and gives the support to the teachers, so the teachers can support the students. So in our cohort, we have 25 people because that was the capacity for the group. And I'm really, really happy to say it's all 10 elementary principals, the 2 principals and 2 assistant principals at the middle schools, the 2 high school principals, the special education supervisors, Nicole and Al and myself. So it's a nice, diverse group showing kind of different stakeholder levels are all involved with the training. So the training is more than just what the teachers get. It's from an administrative perspective to give them the background of what the science of reading is. But then as you can also see in the other wheels, it looks at database decision-making, how they have leadership and improvement science, how to look at intervention, what to do with community, family, assessments. So it gives them the broad picture within their role, how to make the initiative successful. Within this, as we go into the next slide for letters, and with the teachers, the principals are actually going to be on the in-service day with the teachers and helping to support them. So next slide. So letters is, and we've talked about this before, this is the gold standard of professional development. It's an acronym, so kind of put that there. Language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. The participants that we have, it's all teachers in grades K1, 2, and 3. Again, the foundational standards are in K1 and 2. That's what early intervention really focuses there, that if you have the understanding and the knowledge in those grades, the students then in 3rd grade, when you're using reading of how to learn, will start at a better place. We have special education is spread between everything. It's a very large, diverse group. All our literacy specialists, there's about 216 teachers who are involved. The program's 2 years. We're using 8 in-service days. And we're also offering support time so they can complete it during the workday. So having them together, having them work through the different aspects. The program has about 4 different components. There's a textbook that they read. There's an online component with videos and assessments. The in-person, the trainer from Lexia comes on November 4th. And then there's the bridge of practice where what they learn in theory, they take into the classroom. So it's a very comprehensive program. We're doing it as a hybrid, so November 4th and May 19th are in person, and then I think it's February 13th and 2 half days, it's online, synchronous with a trainer. So I just put in here some purpose, but the focus really is on what skills are required, how to teach these skills, and why they're critical. So it's not a curriculum. It's for the teachers to learn more and to build their knowledge so when they're in the classroom, they have a greater depth and understanding of what students need. That's all. So as Lexia has letters, and we're doing that K-3, their next program starts at 4th grade. So the foundational skills that you started with, like phonemic awareness, decoding, fluency, those are the students learning how to read. Aspire then starts with moving to the subjects such as morphology, syntax, how to build sentences. Prosody, discourse is a big one. We had a training today, and that was a big one that teachers are just learning and understanding more what discourse is, what pragmatics is, what prosody is. So their training is set up differently. Their training is set up, there's individual courses, there's 31 of them. So we have Rose Burkhead, our elementary ELA curriculum coordinator, and Kelly Hoffman, our secondary curriculum coordinator, and Amanda Cyrene, our MEA special ed. They got together, they select a pathway of courses for teachers to take. So they'll take about 8 to 10. Elementary has a little bit more time than high school because of the half-day situation. So they go through the courses, they're each about an hour long, and then they have kind of what we call professional learning community, where they talk about what the subject is, and they have activities and say, how does this fit into the classroom? How do we improve upon this? So some of those, again, like English language, with language acquisition, that's of course they have subject verb agreement, a whole variety of courses. And we've taken them, as I said, they're like an hour long, really good, because it's focused on what they do. Again, with this one, it's all classroom teachers grades 4 to 6, all EL teachers and specialists, the ELA teachers in grades 7 through 12, middle school and high school literacy specialists, again, another group of special education teachers. So in total, it's about 226 participants with 5 leaders. So it's very encompassing. The program is also 2 years. We already talked about that part. And the purpose is really, again, equipping the teachers with the knowledge of how to become better at instruction and have that greater depth of knowledge with the science of reading. And then down here is just some components and some of the vocabulary. Next one. The last one is as PD put it together. Remember, this is chapter 49, so this is really a certification based. So as they identify the different certificates impacted with this: early childhood, elementary and middle level, special education, EL, and reading specialists, they're the major component with the EL, the English Language Arts program. However, we focused on the people that are in the positions, but you also have people that have those certs that aren't in the positions. For example, you have a high school math teacher who's carrying a special ed certification or an ELA cert that they've never used, but they have the certification. So with this group of people, and it's a big group, it's about 100, I think, these people are taking the course from PDE. So PDE's curriculum site is called the Standards Line System, SAS site, and they created a course, and it's called Introduction to Structured Literacy. It's third party, it's through them, so it's using their PPID number, and then it's through the state. So as they complete it, there's points, somebody from the state grades it, and then when they complete it, they have their grades, and that'll come to us to verify that it's complete. So that's kind of the continuum with everything in regards to what's taking place with structured literacy. So again, November 4th is our big day. We've had 2 sessions so far with groups of teachers to prep, to help them get used to it. And the best way I kind of say to explaining it to people, they're teachers and they know reading. It's a different type of reading. So if you think of like driving a car, you know how to drive an automatic. This is them learning how to drive stick shift. So it's there, but it's a little bit more complex. It's learning the timing of it, learning the vocabulary of it, learning how it fits together. So it is a big step. And I said, we're in it as a team and we take one step at a time. And the focus of everything is on student success. So, yay for November 4th. It's going to be good. Okay. Should I just move on to the next one?
Sure.
Okay. Next slide is about MTSS. And one of the things I always say to people is all of these things fit together. They're not silos. So what MTSS, the basis of MTSS, is identifying students who need support in those foundational skills. So as they're learning letters and as we have reading horizons and as we're updating curriculum to make sure the curriculum, the assessment, this part for MTSS is providing support. So as you know, we started about 2 years ago. That's when I first started here. So these are the things that are taking place this year. So we have some process and we have some learning going on. Big change in schedule. As we adopted full-day kindergarten, I shouldn't say the elementary principals with their scheduling fit in. So win time is what we need. That's their intervention time. And now in every building, in every grade, the 30 minutes is built into the schedule to provide interventions and support. We are also, and thank you to the school board for this, increased support personnel. So we increased the number of literacy specialists across the district, including at the middle school that didn't have them before, and also the kindergarten instructional assistants to help with the, at that grade level, since they're not reading yet, it's kind of the one-on-one that they have to do, so to provide support as well. With the interventions, this is a major big step, and this is the very exciting part. Tier 1, the focus is on differentiation, so breaking students into small group and providing the support within the classroom, using the data to see who needs the help with what is taking place at that time. So differentiation is great. We have Rose Burkhead and Ken Rooney leading that. For Tier 2 and Tier 3, when it's identified these students need support, we spent the time, also the money with this, to develop the interventions. And interventions must be research-based to show that they actually have a positive effect with the students. You have to follow the guidelines within them, and what we tried to do was to make it consistent across all buildings, consistent use, consistent look at that, looking at the results and making sure they have impact. So with literacy, we added rewards, and UFly, which is the University of Florida, Wilson Reading, and we're connecting with special education, so making sure that the continuum of support from Tier 2 and Tier 3 ties into students who need the support in special education as well, that they're not overlapping things, that it's sequential and based on need. And they were trained in these as well. In math, not to be forgotten, they're a little in the shadow right now, we expanded the iReady licenses. So iReady has a diagnostic that the students take first that identifies their needs, and then they have a program that they follow. So expanding the licenses there for math. We're also doing a slow rollout of the walk-to model, and what that looks like is once they identify students who need support, we differentiate that our reading specialists are providing Tier 3, the most intensive, and we're teaching the teachers of how to group the students and then identify the skill, have that intervention for a group of students. So instead of just one teacher having it, they identify the grade level group and they would go to the teacher who's going to be teaching that skill. So that's a slow rollout to make sure everybody is comfortable, has the preparation. So I say it's slow, but we want it to be smooth. Okay? For communication, the parent reports, those were sent out on October 14th, they were printed. They also sent with explanations, and kindergarten made a video for ELA to explain it's the first time for parents to see the scores, and they're going to be loved because it's the first time in kindergarten. and it's to show growth. So they made a video about that. We're still looking to try to get everything electronic, so we could email. We haven't gotten there yet, and it's more with, on the company side, that it's just not in a format that we could send that yet. But that is the goal, to have it electronic. We're also working with data sharing and analysis. So Tom Barnes, our data analyst, is working with the data and talking to principals and the data teams to see what the data looks like and how to use that and how we see success. So it ties into the next slide. So we have Linkit. Linkit is our data warehouse system. They also have another side that's called Intervention Manager. So as I spoke to you previously about legislation, if legislation goes through, it would be a requirement to have it, but it's also just best practice. So it's really the documentation of students who are receiving support and what we do to help them and if they're successful. So we introduced it last year. This year we had Patty from Linkit came into each of our elementary schools. She sat with their MTSS team. So it would be the building principal, the reading specialist, the math specialist, the intervention facilitator, some of the counselors were there, and that whole group learned how to use the technology for documentation. We want for next year, right from the beginning, that their teams utilize it for grouping, and then their progress monitoring, and it's all in one place. And then that creates kind of the folder, if you think of it like a cumulative academic folder, that follows the students through school. So if there's a student, just say, in 6th grade, and they start seeing like, oh, we're noticing something, they could go back in the record and see actually what interventions they had taken, how long they were on them, what the success rate was. So this documentation throughout the district is really going to support students and the teachers being able to see what's been tried and what students need. So we had all of those, and the intervention plan focuses on Tier 2 and Tier 3, and it includes what the intervention is, what the goal for the student is. It will also have the progress monitoring put in, which is the most important part. It's kind of a chart that has a trend line and shows with each time they meet how the student is doing. So it puts everything together in one place. Tier 1 checklist is something that kind of was taken off the report card with the accommodations checklist, I think it's called. And now it puts it electronically, so if a teacher sees something, they can monitor it. It gives a list of different things to try. The teacher documents that they're trying it. At the elementary school level, it allows multiple people to put data in. So just say the art teacher is noticing something and the homeroom teacher is noticing. It puts it all together so it could be reviewed when they have their data team meetings. So this is a big step. That's it from TSS. Moving on. The next part is the assessment calendar. So we started this last year. It was on the website, so this is kind of just an update for it. So within the current comprehensive plan, what was identified as the needs to be completed was to make sure there was purpose given for assessments and share with community the language of assessments, the description of assessments. So I created all that, and it's on the website under assessments. So you could go in and see everything with it. The 25-26 school year calendar, we had last year's calendar. We updated this. So we could, there's our actual website. So if you're on this, for anyone listening, and for you guys, if you have your laptops open, this is our district website. You just go to departments, and from departments, you would click on curriculum instruction. Under curriculum instruction, you would select assessment. So this is the main page. The first part provides our purpose in Council Rock, what our reasoning is behind assessment. And then, as I said, the language of assessment, and it identifies there's kind of definitions of what all these different types of assessments are and gives you kind of examples. So a parent might be hearing, what's a summative assessment? I keep hearing this word. We could, in meeting with the elementary teachers, so we also direct them back to the website so everything's written there and somebody could read it, absorb it, and use it. So next one then, the description of the district assessments. This is a chart. So what we did here is listed all the assessments, and as you can see, put links to kind of the third-party sites, so if a parent has more questions about something, they could go to the actual sites. The type, based on those definitions from the previous screen, what grade levels take it, put the description of what it is, and then how the data is used, very importantly, that we're not just giving assessments to give assessments, there has to be purpose behind it, and it identifies how data is shared with parents. And then when the administration takes place. So this is a long list. And I'm gonna scroll through the whole thing with it. Everything's on there that you want to know. And then on our next one, how all of this ties together. Is our actual district assessments. So there's, here we go. Just scroll down. I know the spacing of it is not my favorite. I more like it to look perfect. But we have a chart for elementary school, a chart for middle school, and a chart for high school. It gives the grade levels on one axis, and across the top it gives the months, and then the identification. So this is high school. So high school, the local assessments would be final exams and midterms. Then we have our Keystone exams listed. We have CDTs, which are also help give us data to prepare the students and let us know how they'll do for Keystone exams. SAT and ACT on here are when those exams, they're third party, but when they're given in Council Rock. So there's more times it's available. They're usually once a month at the beginning of the month on a Saturday, but these are actual times so parents could see and plan. And I think that's most of everything that's on there. At the bottom of it, WIDA testing is for our English language learners. That's the test they take to identify what their range of language is. And then at the bottom, PASA is for our special education students within the 1%. So then the next one going down, middle school, again, final exams, PSSAs, Keystone exams, CDTs. Some of the grades with students who struggle would have DIBELS for ELA. And then the last one, I don't like that space, but for elementary, again, we give the universal screeners, DIBEL and Acadians at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. End of year, you'll see you have your PSSAs listed. Two things that are different in addition here that aren't on the others. In bold are the actual student assessments that are taken. The non-bold is the SRSSIE screening. That's a behavior inventory that teachers do for the students. So that's why it looks a little different. And the COGAT in March, you see for first grade, that's tested for gifted. It's a screen for gifted. And that wraps it up.
I think we have several questions. Mr.
Sure.
Tate first.
Thanks. We often hear people talk about testing that's mandated. That's a lot of assessment. How much of it would you say roughly is mandated by the state? And there's no federal mandate, is there?
No. Federal is just really through IDEA, more in funding. So
Right.
within Pennsylvania, what's mandated is that you must teach to the standards, and your goal is to assess for proficiency on either your PSSA or Keystone. So PSSA and Keystone are the key that have to take place in the district. So it's a whole process with it. The CDT is the same company, everything that you take, and it's called the Classroom Diagnostic Test. So when the students take it, it's online, it's adaptive test. So when they take one question, if they get it right, it will ask higher level question. If they get it wrong, it will again continue until it finds the point of where the student is. So it's diagnostic to say within the standards where the students are, if they're at the grade level, if they're below the grade level, and it specifies with standards. So just like MTSS, when you're looking at foundational skills, CDTs are diagnostic to see where they are within standards. So that whole process we're actually building this year. The two big pieces for that are making sure the teachers know how to understand and use diagnostic data to help. The other part is also getting students involved in their own data. So having conferencing with students for them to look at their data to see where their strengths are, where their weaknesses, and to plan. So part of the College and Career Readiness is really having students set goals and to set academic goals. So we want to do that through the CDTs. For the kind of mandated, say, is the universal screeners, because the recent legislation with structured literacy and science of reading requires you to do the universal screener. So we have DIBELS for ELA, Acadians for math, and that you give them 3 times a year, beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. Besides that, it's optional. So one of the big roles of Tom Barnes as our data analyst is making sure that the data that we're getting is being used correctly for teachers and in the classroom to make decision, and then also looking at what are the best assessments to give, that we're not just giving assessments, you have to use the data to inform practice and to help students. So assessment is big.
Thank you.
Stone?
I'm pretty impressed. I'm blown away, actually. So, so the description of the assessments is on the, is a table before those charts. So if I wanted to look up WID, what that testing is, I would see that in that previous. And that's all on the Council Rock School Board under departments, and then curriculum and instruction, and then keeps breaking down.
And that would be under assessment.
So that is available. And
For
then,
everyone to see. And if they have more questions, the link to, like, WIDA is a national thing, you could click on that and it'll give you even more information that you could have.
it's wonderful.
The real goal behind this, and looking at the last comprehensive plan and seeing the meaning behind it, is the transparency for parents to see and to understand and know what's taking place so that they can work with their children, they could ask the right questions, and it's really about the transparency of everything.
So is there a link in here to actually look at your own child's testing scores, or what they mean, or how does that
For
piece work?
testing scores, the next piece is in our data warehouse Linkit. That's where all the data is stored and managed. So for example, parents will get hard copies of things. So the state sends out the student report to the parent for PSSA. CDTs are more internal to work with the students and as a guide for the students to use, the teachers to use to how to improve. So those aren't really sent home because it's a working part document. I'm not sure with COGAT and SSIE how that's shared.
I'm not sure either.
And so I know Gifted is shared because of the program, and I'm just not familiar with how, because I don't do it.
Tammy, COGAT results are sent to parents.
To send to parents? Okay, good.
Is there a process by which parents can be
To see it?
trained on how to utilize this, on how to understand it, how it relates to
The
their
website?
kids? Where they,
Sure, I think it's a great idea. And those community pieces, right now, our first part was, I shared it all on August 27th. We had all the elementary teachers that we worked with, so I shared all of the things on the website with them and really encouraged them through, especially parent conferences, is to show them everything and to direct them all to one place to get answers to questions. But I think the best part is once you get on it, just to start clicking and seeing, because our curriculum pieces are all in there as well. So we have the curriculum piece, the instruction piece is what includes the structured literacy plan. Hopefully, if everything goes well, by December, we'll have the MTSS information up there for parents. So it'll be one-stop shopping to get all the information they have. And then once they go through that, if there's questions and there's more understanding, I'd be happy to have sessions for people to help. But again, it's that transparency so they know.
and then with the teachers training, they're training simultaneously at all grade levels. And you said it's not, this isn't curriculum, this is how to utilize these resources into their curriculum, right? So that's why it
All the pieces go together. So in Pennsylvania, we have the standards aligned system. and I say this over and over, and I think the teachers are getting kind of thing, the standards are what is decided upon by the committee. So my very proud moment, like my own children, Liz Potash in PE Health and Beth Lynch from our art department are actually on committees right now for art and PE, where they do a lot of work to establish what the state standards are. So it's college professors, it's teachers, it's different people from public. It's not, there's this misconception that somebody in Harrisburg, a legislator, is making them, and they're not. It's a really informed group that does it. So everything we do educationally is through the standards. And the state is clear to say, here are the standards. The purpose of them is that the students are proficient in what takes place in PSSA and Keystone. So there's also the misconception, people will say, oh, this is a one-time test that really doesn't look at students. So it's when you're planning your curriculum, with each unit you're planning, you're tying it to, and our teachers are doing this right now, and our curriculum coordinators, you're tying everything to the standards to make sure students are learning it. And then it's a whole process that ties together and culminates with that. So that was the original intention with all the tests from the state. So as they go through the assessment plan, you have the standards and looking at the state assessment, and then you have the other branch looking at MTSS and CDTs, how we provide support to students who aren't on instructional level. So the state looks at both of those, because in the end, it's about the student success. So now it's merging everything together. A lot going on.
Vicky?
A couple questions. Thank you. That was a very good presentation, easy to understand. Something that Ms. Stone said, but I had it written down, was on page 6, where you talked about support time for the programs, for the teachers.
For letters.
For letters, correct. Does that support time take away from actual instruction, or is that done?
Yes, so what we're looking at right now is, because what the state is looking at and saying that it should be during contracted time. So that's kind of a state kind of thing. But when you look at it to say it might take these hours away, but the benefit that comes back when they come back into the classroom is they're bringing all of that with them to it. So it's kind of that trade-off of things, and we're trying to look at how to keep it as a manageable, because
I was going to say, do you know
there's only so much you could control.
Do you know how many hours that is?
Yes, so with the program, I said it has those 4 components. So on the website, and when we post things, they'll say like it's this number of hours. So it could be between like just say 12 and 20. But there's a allotted time, a piece of that should be taking place within the classroom. Then they divide it between reading that takes place, the online portion, and the in-person portion. So when we say it's a comprehensive, the reason it's gold standard is because it puts all that modality in. So looking at it when you say, oh, the people are doing the PDE SAS course, the district decision is we don't want a K-3 teacher who's working very intensely with those foundational skills just to skim the surface. You want them to get the bang for the buck, to say, we're putting this money in because we believe that with this support, they're going to have such impact on the students that that is the payoff for everything. So we will keep you informed of how it goes.
And then
it's a big undertaking.
One final question.
Sure.
Has the initial DIBELS testing, do you have those results? Or
Yes, they had the parent reports already went out on the 14th, so they have those already.
Okay.
So what, Tom, I think in the next meeting in November?
Right,
I think
in
he's
November,
sharing
we're
all
going
that
to include
data.
that with the data review.
Okay, so we've already assessed and contacted parents who are going to need intervention.
They've already started.
Already started. Fantastic. Thank you.
That was one of our goals. With the first years, it took the time for teachers to learn the assessments, to get everything put together for it. Now we want to get it moving faster, quicker, having the use of technology, having people learn how to use it efficiently so to save time. The last piece is just that reporting that they still have to print. Like we want to move that along. That's a lot.
Right. Yeah, the concern has always been in previous years that parents rightfully say, I don't find out until,
Thanksgiving.
correct.
Yeah,
So as long as that's moving closer and closer to the beginning of the year, that's,
October 14th.
thank you.
And I say that with that because it takes them, we wait at the beginning of the school year just because kids have to get acclimated to being back in school and, change from summer. And then it's about 2 weeks of testing because they're testing both in math and in ELA. And then that next week, as they're compiling the data, I upload the data with Linkit, and there's always kids on vacation or kids that are sick. So then you want to get all the data complete, and then we print and send the report. So it was a very tight timeline. So I think we did it.
Roosevelt?
Thank you. I appreciate the fact that this is all integrated. So some of my questions are also going to be integrated.
Okay, great.
The first, and I think a lot of them have been addressed to some degree. So on the MTSS, when does these interventions occur?
During that win time,
Okay.
so when you see when, it's a 30-minute time,
Yep.
and it's during that time where the interventions take place. So in Tier 2, they're usually like a shorter period of time. So most of the research-based things for Tier 2, like ELA can do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, math can do Tuesday, Thursday. So when they have their team meetings, they look at what the student needs, they look at how and when the students are get it. If they need more intensive, a lot of the win times are backed against ELA time. So just say you need a more intense intervention that's 40 minutes, they could have that time back to back. And that would be the reading specialist working with them for those, and the math specialist for math. Math specialists also do the enrichment that way as well.
Is that consistent for middle school and high school as well?
Middle school does not have MTSS at this time.
Right.
Secondary MTSS is different. So now this is kind of from my previous background as high school principal. With that, you're looking more at your academics, your grades, you're looking at attendance, and you're looking at discipline. So typically with a secondary MTSS system, it's called the early warning system, and they get a score. So that's really based on, as kids get older, if there's other intervening things, it'll come up through attendance, through disciplinary things. So if there's an academic problem, it manifests differently. So we're starting to look at it with at the academic side, because we have reading specialists now at the middle school. They were part of that training on intervention managers, so the documenting of things, they were working with the elementary teachers, but the whole program like that is much more large. It's larger, and it's a different type of training, because the other piece you're looking at with struggling students is dropout prevention.
Right, and so thinking about secondary schools, how is the district helping them in this respect? I can understand, since this is a new program, that it helps to prevent problems from going into secondary, but what about our current students that are in secondary that have some of these?
Great question. They're a little different because most of them would be identified with academic through the process. So you have different levels of courses. So if it's an LRC course, if it's a reading and writing workshop, so academically they're still monitored and maintained that way. For attendance, there's a whole process procedure they're called SAPES, where they're meeting with students if they have all that. So they're right now just being done separately, but they're all still there. MTSS just coordinates everything together.
I would say at the middle school, you have PBIS, the positive behavior, so that's more on the behavior side. Truancy elimination plans for attendance, you have both at the middle school and the high school. You have the advisory period at the end of the day for the middle school, where students are starting to fall down a little bit in classes. They can receive that extra help. Extra help at the high school gets a little bit tighter during the day. Of course, teachers differentiate instruction, so when students are struggling within the classroom, they will differentiate the instruction to meet the needs of individual students. But a big part of our culture at both high schools is after-school clinic, Tuesdays and Thursdays, for that additional help. But of course, students can be busy with extracurricular activities, so there are other systems in place. I mean, if a student, and as Tammy mentioned, we already have a pretty stratified curriculum where there's a lot of different levels. But if a student is struggling in a given level, perhaps they change courses. Perhaps they would go for the multidisciplinary team to see if there is a greater need. They might have eligibility for special services and things of that nature. So those systems are all in place. We don't have that necessarily the half-hour win time like the elementary does. The middle school is a little bit closer. High school, it's a little bit tougher, but as you know, we talked about with the exploration of high school schedule, and I don't know, what will ultimately come to fruition, but one of the things that we talked about as an overall goal was embedding intervention and enrichment time into the academic day. Again, can that be done through things like advisory periods, lunch and learns, and different schools have had different levels of success with that.
Right. Thinking back to these assessments, how are they administered?
So for the universal screeners, they are about a minute to minute and a half. They're very short. So at the younger grade levels where they're not reading yet, it's more of a one-on-one between the teacher and the student. For ELA, it's on a handheld device, so the questions and everything are there, and they're automatically inputting the data. Math looks a little different, and we're working on math because the math program has a lot of assessments. So they have Number Corner, and they have their unit assessments. So we're trying to kind of meld it together to get, again, the bang for the buck and not using as much instructional time for that. Theirs are more paper and pencil. They're moving a lot of their things onto Linkit, so it's online taking it, but that gets harder as the content gets harder. So when you're looking at the early things that numbers, naming 1, 2, 3, 4, what is in order? When you're getting up to 5th and 6th grade, you're looking at multiple digit addition, subtraction, so you have the computation and you have the concepts and application, so those two parts. So the series is set up that they use Bridges is really on concept and application, so having the students understand, and it's less with the computation. With the universal screeners, there's a lot of computation, because just like reading fluency, there's math fluency and numeracy, so it's finding the balance between the two for the success of the students.
And overall, what is the district's anticipated goals?
So for looking at it, we're working with Tom for the data. If you remember the kind of that triangle, they always refer to it, and it says you should have about 80% of students. So when you look at that data, you want to say, oh, 80% is good. A number of our schools at the end of the year are at 80%. My personal thing that I tell teachers is by the end of 2nd grade, we want to get as many students close to 100 because you need that skill to be readers. So in elementary, when we talk about standards, we talk about mastery. So we want to get those foundational skills on all the kids as high as they can be. So individually, they look at it per grade level. So they set their goals within a grade level team at each building, because each building is different. All students are different. So they set those goals to say how much and how can we move them to these different. So between ELA and math, there's a lot. When they have the data meetings after the universal screeners, that's the conversation. And then they look at the progress monitoring to say, if it's a 8-week intervention, how is the student doing when they give each probe if it's every 2 weeks? Are they making the growth for it? If they are they out? Are they not making progress? Do we change the intervention? So there's goals embedded for each student as well, based on how they're doing. So there's kind of 3 levels of goals that we do, but the most important is the individual level for the student.
That's great. Thank you.
Suzaki?
Thank you. You've been busy, huh? This is a lot.
That's my middle.
So thank you. I'm also very impressed. So I do have some questions. I guess going back to the first section on structured literacy, the slide alluded to some measurements, some data, like how are we going to measure it? And I think I think the slide was saying that the teachers are gonna talk about how we're going to measure it. Do we know how we're going to measure it yet?
Well, that's the discussion we're having with, because you can't just say when a teacher is doing something, how do we see how much they've learned? So you could use the data from the site where they're taking their assessment. So they should have an 80%, that's the goal, to have all teachers reading that level of certification. But then that's great that they have the background. We also want to see how that's going to impact within the classroom. So that's not as clear cut because you can't just ask people, how do you feel about it? It has to be more quantitative to say, how are we seeing this difference? And that's where I'm working with Dr. Barnes to see what is the best indicator that really shows us. Is it using the data from DIBELS, and are we going to see, are we looking at more of a curriculum piece to see that the students are moving ahead with that? So we're looking at all the different aspects of it to see what's going to really show us the benefit of it.
It's tough because I imagine we don't have enough data from Reading Horizons to have a starting point to say that this is improved because we've only been doing Reading Horizons.
We have the universal screeners with DIBELS.
Yeah.
We're creating, as I said, all the assessments that the students are taking. Roseburg had did an outstanding job with assessments that they're tying all the questions to the standards so that we're able through Linkit to get the reports to say how students are doing. CDTs don't start till 3rd grade. So that's more instructional. So we're looking at that. What is the impact is taking place at 2 different levels. You should see it within DIBELS. You should also see it within their classroom performance. So we're looking at all that to see what's really going to show us the benefit of everything. And then also talking about the cost benefit analysis. Just say we're putting a lot of money into it. How are we seeing that it's made the impact? So we're looking at that, and we're going to have data, but we want to look at how's it best going to answer our questions?
Remind me, is the letters training something that all districts in Pennsylvania have to do, or is it?
They let it, well, again, this is from legislature. So originally what the legislation was on July 1st, they put out to say these are the programs that we strongly suggest. At that time, the language wasn't, you must use one of these. So they had committees, they worked with West Ed, and they came up and they posted it on July 1st. So everybody hopped on July 1st and was like, oh, okay. Then they took it down like July 2nd because the legislators said this isn't what we wanted. We wanted Pennsylvania to come up with our own criteria instead of using what like Colorado does or what Works Clearinghouse. So now there's nothing up there except the guidance. So in looking at the programs, letters is the gold standard. Like that's been beyond. We looked at AIM, we looked at everything, but it always comes back what you put into it, you get out of it. But letters is like the premier program.
Thank you. My next question is, when you talk about Tom Barnes meeting with the different principals and whether it's suggesting action or like discussing what actions could be taken and at each individual school, is that information going to be shared? Like, that would be interesting to know, like, okay, well, these are the changes we're making at different schools.
Well, it's kind of a two-part process. So as Tom looks at the data, so he shares the data for everything. They look at the PSSAs. You could do the deep dive into actually the standards to see from the reports, either from Linkit or from the state. There's PVOS data that gives projections. So we have a whole lot of data. So he shares that with the principals. So I work with the curriculum coordinators to help like on the curriculum side of everything, but then the principals are an outstanding group of people and they set the goals for their building and they look at how they go about sharing the data. So I know on, was it October 8th, I think was the half day, a number of them met with their faculties and they shared the data and then they come up with their plans for their buildings. So we all kind of work together with it. So all the different pieces fit together.
And then I guess my last question, I just want to make sure I understand the win time. So like, let's say there's a child who needs tier 3 support for reading, pulled out during win time to meet with the reading specialist.
Right.
what I guess I want to make sure I understand is the tier 2 support. So the tier 2 support is being done by a classroom teacher?
That's where we're moving to. That's the most.
One, like, is everybody who needs second grade tier 2 getting the same one teacher's doing that, or
No,
everybody's
so
their own teacher?
When they take the universal screener, it will identify where their weaknesses are. So it's all skill-based. So if it's just, say, a decoding skill that's needed, you might have one teacher working on decoding. You might have another teacher working on phonemes or phonemes.
So kids are going to leave their classroom and go down the hall.
Go to where the help is needed. So that's why it's kind of the walk to read model.
Yeah.
And that gives the teachers a greater, well, I should say, it gives them a more specific lens with it, but we're still working out all the processes for it. So where do all the students go? And again, it looks very different in different schools. So Wrightstown versus like Sulphidestone, the number of teachers you have. So the principals are in charge of that within their building, and they're making the decisions based with their staff and what it looks like and doing the training for it.
That makes sense to me, so I think that's good. Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Ken?
Thank you. I guess kind of piggybacking off of Ms. Oseki's question, with the letters training, it's great that the teachers will learn, the what and the how to science of reading. Could you give any examples of like the strategies that they may apply in their actual teaching of the curriculum based upon the skills that they're learning about the science of reading?
So science of reading starts with the sounds from oral language. So like ta, ba, when you start blending, then it's the attachment of the sound to the letter. And then once you make that attachment, it's putting words together. So an example of that, and I'm showing you today, is how the students' mouths should look when you do a ta, where the tongue is, when you make a different sound and it uses your throat, the use of like a mirror to see, when it goes into phoneme segmentation. So different programs will do, some will do b-at. Our program for Reading Horizons does it on their arm. So it's teaching the teachers the pieces like that. So the difference if you have a CH at the end of the word or a TCH, and it'll show like at the little half circle tables what the teacher should ask. So like an example today was the 30-minute discussion with a student. So oral language development needs oral language. So it's how to talk to a student, how to help them reformat instead of saying phrases to speak in a sentence. So it's all those types of pieces. Because our teachers here did Reading Horizons first, they kind of learned those processes, but now they're learning the why behind that, the mechanics of it, the tactile pieces of learning. And the big piece is science of reading, the science base of it, the parts of the brain, and where language sensors are with it, and how it works together, and how you develop that with students. So this year, it's based on the word recognition. Next year, in Volume 2, it goes into more of the comprehension development.
Excellent, thank you. I know there was some confusion in the past with, parents figuring out, well, how is this going to be applicable for teachers to use in the classroom?
Mm-hmm.
My second question was regarding the MTSS, talking about, whether it's a tier 1 or tier 2 intervention that students are getting or child is getting, and it seems like from their teacher. At what point, or is this ever communicated to families?
Yeah, so tier 1 is your best practice within classroom. So the focus within the classrooms is on differentiation, to be able to have a small group as you're teaching to say, based on the data we're seeing, you need help, just say with like the tuh, and then to work with the kids right then in the classroom. Tier 2 starts after the universal screener, where there's a deficiency identified. Usually what we're doing is you give the diagnostic assessment to say what level they are with the skill, and then attaching that to the intervention. So as soon as they hit that point, when I talked about those intervention plans, that's when the communication with parents happens. And what we're moving to, that like this has to be identifying what intervention is used, identifying how often, what it looks like, and then the most important part is progress monitoring, so parents understand how their students are progressing, how their child is progressing as a student, to show if there's growth. Because the issue we look at right now is, this is our third year. The first year was really just a learning year, so I hesitate to even call that a year. But now to look at the students that are in the well below basic, and that, well, I'm sorry, below benchmark, I'm thinking PSSAs, so the below benchmark and the below benchmark, and looking at the skills where they are and making sure that there's movement. And that's the biggest part with the interventions. The only way you're gonna see the movement there is to have research-based things where students are showing progress.
So is there a checklist then for tier 2? I guess I'm just wondering, like, as a parent, if I find out that my child is receiving an intervention skill-based, which is excellent, you know, how would I know that? Would it be a checklist that would be kind of, you know,
Yeah, for
that's
progress,
generic?
yeah, for progress monitoring, what it looks like is it's a chart. So if you just think of the X and Y axis, they have a trend line, usually from the beginning of the diagnostic, that says, here's where they're starting from our assessment, here's where they should be ending. So that the interventionist has to determine, based on the skill level, how long it'll take. So typical intervention could be like 6 to 10 weeks. So typically, if it's a tier 2, it might be once every 2 weeks, they give kind of a probe. It's one of those 1-minute tests to see how the kids are doing, and then they plot it on that graph. So the goal is to be on that line or above the line. If it kind of flat lines and they're not making, then it's digging deeper to see what it is. So that report is what's shared with parents. So they know if it's at the middle of the year and they share that it's a 10-week. So it's hard because you have so many holidays in the beginning. So you want to have enough time in the intervention to see. But it could go the opposite way. You get in the intervention and they're above the line right off. So typically you have at least 3 probes to show that they've met, they understand it, and then make a decision. Do they move, do they stay, all that conversation. But that progress monitoring is the part where the parents get the information.
Okay, thank you so much.
Stone?
Yeah, going back to the training of the teachers, you say that they're assessed at, want them at 80%.
Yeah, so
How do you do that? What if they can't meet that? What are we doing to make sure that they're using the program the way they've been trained to?
When I tell you about, like, I give the analogy kind of in jest that it's, if you drive an automatic, it's like learning stick shift. So if you think of it, where they are right now at the beginning is that they're on a hill and there's a Porsche behind them. So they're like, oh my goodness, I have to get this. I'm so like, I have to get this. And because they're teachers, they want to do the best. So how the program is set up is it's online. So there's different sessions in it. So they watch the video, they hear it, they read it in the book, they take notes. And then at the end of each session, there's 5 questions. So it's like checking your understanding. So those are to keep them on pace with what it is. Then at the end of the unit is the bigger test that they have to. So they have those little ones. If they get it wrong, they can take it a second time. And I could tell you, one teacher got a 60 on it because they're not easy questions. They're not. This isn't like an easy thing. So they really have to dive into how it's asked to say, like, it'll say which is false of these statements, and they're very close. Like, you have to go in the book to make sure you know and understand it. So they want that 100%. They'll take it a second time, and they're looking at everything. They can talk to each other. It's not like sitting in the room like a SAT. They can talk, they go through everything, and they're hitting it. They're hitting it. When they don't get an 80% on that, they're not gonna let it go. They want to get that score. So it's been interesting and fun, but they're right now in the first stage, and it's a new thing. People are just like, I don't know what to expect. And now as they're processing through it and they're getting it, they're like, okay, my stress level might come down a little. Because in the end, I said, it's not the test score. It's not, the checkbox for the state. It's about them knowing it's for student success. So that's what my encouraging words to them are. you can do this.
And November 4th will help, I agree with
Yeah.
you. Once people get into that process, we
Mhm.
think that some of that will
Yeah.
lessen. For sure.
And we actually have people that, are working ahead and doing it, so it's gonna be good. But with anything new, it has to have the time and they have to really get into the product. That's good.
Mrs. Zaki?
I was hoping that maybe you could just speak a little bit more towards the communication with parents when their child is in some level of support. So is the intervention plan shared with parents?
The intervention plan, if you think of it, it's how they describe it, it's like the first part is like the folder. And then in the folder, when they have an intervention, it's put in there. And that kind of digital piece of paper that goes in there identifies what it is, what the goal is, what skill they're working on. So my goal in working with, because it's more building level, the principals are working with that, is to have, again, the Tammy part is saying, don't send home something until you've called home and talked to people so they understand it. Because if you just get the piece of paper in the mail, you're like, oh my God, what's taking place? So our first thing is to call the parent and to have a discussion or an email to say, let's talk about it. Then to explain what it is, because this is still new for many people. So to have that explanation with them, and then not just sending a paper that says you're an intervention, but having the explanation with it. The next big piece is the progress monitoring. That's essential.
Yeah, I mean, you
That's
spoke
just
with that,
growth.
it sounds like that is shared. Is the parent made aware their kid is in tier 2 support or tier 3? And, presumably when they move.
Part of the intervention program, intervention manager program on Linkit also has different things for communication. So they could put in that they've called parents, they've talked to parents and everything like that. And on the other side, in my free time, there are different letters that you could send and put in the letterhead with it to send those reports electronically. So I'm working on that right now. That's my goal, is for middle of the year to see if we could get that to make it easier, because everything with communication that they're doing, the more efficient and effective it is, it'll happen. So I work a lot with that to see how we can improve that and use technology. That's why we have technology.
Seems like you're making really good progress.
I have to give so much credit to our teachers, our literacy and math specialists, our building principals. I work with them, but I work to support them, and they have the heavy load and they're doing amazing work. So kudos to all of them, the curriculum coordinators. It's a team effort.
And in addition, I want to thank all of you for your support.
Yes.
With the training and providing us with the resources to be able to do this.
Yep. So.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, Nicholas.
Good. Thank you.
I
Thank you,
just
Tammy.
like that you just don't sit still, just improve and make things happen and help, the students and the teachers. So that's amazing.
I'm just the
For all of you.
I'm just the support. It really is like the principals are doing an amazing job with MTSS, their teams with setting up interventions, the teachers with the trainings, the literacy specialists, the math specialists, the intervention facilitators. It's a big ask and they've been doing a lot. So they deserve all credit for everything taking place. They've been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's two areas I want to talk about tonight in terms of special education. One is, as I may have mentioned before, our special education program is going through an audit this year by PDE. And then the second thing I want to discuss is just an update on our CPAC, where we are based on our last meeting. So real quick, I just want to give an idea of, when PD comes in to review our program, what does that look like? What are they looking for? So just a couple, who asked it? Someone able to,
Move to the next slide.
yeah.
Oh, I think you did.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I got it.
Go back.
You go back one. So just a couple things about cyclical monitoring. So every 6 years, PD will go around to every district. Districts are on different cycles, obviously, and kind of look at their special education program. Council Rock last went through this in the spring of 2020. What they're looking for, they're looking at students' IEPs, evaluations, timelines, procedural safeguards, and what our district policies are, and procedures as it comes to special education. Purpose of this is to verify compliance and identify areas of improvement. So specifically, when they come in, what are they looking for? So the first thing they're going to look at is they're going to review student files. So PDE will randomly, well, not randomly, I know when they're coming in February. They're going to randomly ask me to pull 10 student files, and they're going to look through those files to look for compliance and make sure we're compliant with dates and evaluations. They're looking to make sure each file has required documentation. They're not just looking at one IEP. They're going to be looking at if a student has an IEP in first grade and they have to be in 10th grade, they're going to look at the totality of that file. Meaning, if they see a student's not making progress, let's say in 3rd grade, they're going to want to look at that 4th grade IEP and see what changes did we make. If the students are making reading progress or math progress, they want to make sure that we're adjusting and making changes to the student's programming. So it's a very thorough review of that file. They're not just looking at one document. They use a standardized scoring rubric to identify for compliant, non-compliant, or if there's any areas in the student files that need correction. Second thing they're looking at is they're going to review our district policies and procedures when it comes to special education. They're going to look at our procedural manuals, making sure we have them, internal forms to ensure alignments with chapter 14, 15, and 16. And they're going to look at how we handle discipline, eligibility, and transition planning as it concerns special education students. They're going to review our staff and training records, making sure our special education teachers hold the proper certifications. They're also going to look at our PD that we've done for the past 5 years, making sure teachers have been trained in special education, writing correct IEPs, progress monitoring, making sure teachers are trained in the proper programs in order to educate our students. So they're going to look at what we've done the past, since our last audit up until now. They're going to get parent and stakeholder input. The PD distributes parent surveys to all to all families in special education to ensure, family engagement. Families feel engaged and they're satisfied with the program. They're going to conduct focus groups, just like they randomly choose student files. They're going to randomly choose parents to interview. They're also going to interview teachers as well as administration to kind of get their feel and their opinion on our special education programs. Finally, they're going to look at our data and outcome reviews. They're going to look at enrollment, graduation. They're going to look at our LRE numbers to see if there's room for improvement. They want to make sure that students have equitable access and students with disabilities are making progress within our school system. So based on those criteria, from there, I'm sorry, go back one. We might be found, if we're found deficient in one of those areas, it will be called what's corrective action, in which case my team and I will have to develop a plan in order to get us out of that, whatever they find to be deficient within the program. So that might mean additional professional development for staff. It might mean looking at, how we include students in general education classrooms. It really depends on what the deficiency is and us coming forward with a plan of how to kind of fix those issues. Why does this matter? Well, we're looking to protect students' rights, confirming that every student with IEP receives services as designed. We're looking to strengthen our instructional quality, not just curriculum-wise, but also with the reading intervention programs that we've tried to put in place, at least at our elementary schools for this year. And then always looking for continuous improvement. With that corrective action plan, it's not just a question of fixing one thing and then moving on. If you're in corrective action plan, you submit things for several years in advance to make sure, you fix one thing and then the next year it falls back to where it's, you're back in corrective action again. So anything we have to fix is something we have to submit several years in a row in order to make sure we're maintaining those standards. And that's a very broad view of the cyclical monitoring. I could have done 20 more slides on it, but I just wanted to give you a broad overview of what that looks like this year when it goes on. Second part of this, and I'm sure you have questions on the cyclical monitoring, is the CPAC. So we had our first meeting on October 8th. We had approximately 30 people there. We had parents, board members, administrators, and some teachers actually attended this as well. The focus of the meeting was really shifting the structure of CPAC and making it more parent-driven. Being here since April this year, I understand CPAC is a major push and something we really want to pursue here, and I'm really trying to make that shift, at least in my experience of making it more parent-driven and less driven from my office in terms of agendas and what we talk about. So moving forward, our current model, again, is more driven from my office, looking to kind of make this a more parent-led and district-supported organization. Kind of that shared ownership between the district and the parents. Trying to increase community engagement and strengthen the trust with our parents. So what I've done, I'm working on forming a transition group, which I discussed at our CPAC meeting. Really a group of parents from the district whose focus is kind of taking that next step from our current model, which is still in place, and making it more a parent-led organization, coming up with guidelines, outlines. At our first meeting, which hasn't been scheduled yet, looking at inviting parents from other CPACs that have strong CPACs to kind of come in and talk to our parents in regards of how do you get this off the ground, because there's a lot of initial work when you're trying to turn this over at a parent-run organization where you have elections and people, serving in different leadership roles on the CPAC committee. So there's a lot of legwork in the beginning, which I'm kind of hoping to take this committee and kind of lead them into those next steps. One thing on here real quick, when I first did this slide, I had the ambition of sending out that email on October 23rd. I actually sent it out this Monday to all special ed parents looking for who would be interested in serving on this committee. In that email, there's a questionnaire. So if they're interested, I asked them to fill out a questionnaire. And really what I'm looking for, as diverse as our special ed population is, the diversity of our parents. Having someone from elementary, middle, and high school, maybe from different programs, whether it's our ASS, even including our gifted parents who, sometimes you don't think of them in terms of special ed, but they are part of our special ed population. So just having that diversity, diversity of thoughts in terms of how the CPAC is going to be set up and kind of setting that common theme. So when that first meeting happens, once the committee is established, we're really going to be looking to begin revisiting why the shift is happening and kind of review those examples of those other CPAC meetings and kind of develop kind of standards in terms of what we're looking for. We're going to be trying to draft a mission and vision statement. Why does CPAC exist? What would success look like for 3 years for this organization? And kind of coming up with core values. Keeping it short and clear, which becomes a foundation of our redefinition of what CPAC should be for the district. And again, my personal vision based on, and again, parents might have a different vision, but what I'm hoping to accomplish with this is having a CPAC that's led by parents with partnership with the district, opportunity for advocacy and inclusion opportunities, safe and collaborative space for sharing experiences or discussing issues, and really strengthen that communication between families and schools, and kind of build that trust. Those are my 2 main areas.
Questions? Stone?
This, the 6-year review, how long does that usually take? I assume they send, I don't know, a team of people to sit, and they sit in our
I reserve this room.
And ask for files.
Yes.
And that's how they start. It's kind of like doing a pension audit.
Well, actually, it's going to start in December, because
Okay.
when it comes to the policy reviews and procedures, those are things I can upload to them. They don't necessarily have to come on site for those. But in February, I believe it's the second week, they'll be sitting in this room, because I've already reserved it, and that's when they'll come in and they go through the hard files of the students. So they'll be sitting in here and reviewing that. Unless there's a delay by the state, in my past experience, typically by May or June, I'd have the results, so that way the district has the summer to kind of review and make any changes or kind of start, if there are corrective actions, kind of start working on putting things in place for the following school year.
Do they take time from teachers that may have signed the IEP to make specific questions of them? Or they just, just look at the hard copy?
If they see something that's concerning, they'll probably come to me, not the teacher. Their only interaction with teachers are the random teachers that are gonna be surveyed and interviewed by them based on getting their perspective, what they think our special ed programs are like.
So how, in your experience, how much time do they spend sitting in this room?
They'll be here 3 days.
Okay.
3 days.
Mr. Hickey?
Couple things. You said they randomly pick files?
Yes.
So they're not selected by the district in any way, shape, they'll just say, let me see, Mr. Jones, Mr. Smith, and.
They'll let me know a few days, well, sometimes it's a few weeks in advance. They'll say, these are the files we're pulling, I'll get them ready, and then they'll be down here ready for them.
Now, say you were found not in compliance. You said there, I guess, is a remedial action that you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you don't do it?
If I don't meet the goals or I just don't do the action? Because it's possible to put something in place that might not work.
Right, I mean, what I hear from parents is that 6 years ago, the district was quote-unquote non-compliant. And whatever we did, we're still non-compliant.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, I don't want to say, is that possible? That we are non-compliant and we are still non-compliant 6 years later with the same metric that they were looking at?
It's possible, because it was 6 years ago, that from my experience, and I not knowing what happened 6 years ago, and it was the spring of 2020, so I know there was, because I went back to look at our past monitoring, it's a little disjointed just based on what was happening at the time. It's possible that PD would not allow a district not to get out of that compliance issue, at least at some point during that 6 years, or we would still be in that corrective action. So and I haven't gone back the full 6 years, but at some point, we must have been out of that corrective action in order for PD not to be coming back at us to make that.
What do they do if we fall out of, or we don't, if we're in compliance, out of compliance, back in, or we don't meet the standards?
It's possible. I haven't seen this firsthand because in my experience is districts I've worked in, we've always made the goals that we've set out. I suppose, they could send people from PD in here to help design, just kind of step in and kind of guide us more in terms of what we need to do, and kind of instead of us coming up with a plan, we're kind of putting it in their hands and say, well, you've tried this, now we're coming in and telling you what you need to do. So we run the risk of, instead of us trying to figure this out, having them come in and dictate to us, well, you tried it, now we're going to tell you what we think you need to do.
And then one final question, I guess, is do inclusion numbers factor into that compliance or non-compliance, or our inclusion percentages?
Yes, the LRE percentage, that's part of it, that's a big part of the, I forget which indicator, but it's one of the indicators that they will look at. So there's 3 levels, right? You're included 80% of the time or more, and 40 to 80% or less than 40%. And then they also look at the number of percentage of students that we have out of district that we might send out to alternative schools. So that's all part of the LRE percentage that they look at.
Okay, so if we are not in compliance with an inclusion number, they'll come up with a recommendation or an action plan, or we have to come up with an action plan to fall into that acceptable range or
They're
percentage.
gonna allow us to come up with our own first, and then I'm gonna have to submit yearly the updated numbers. And if we don't, again, I've never had this happen in the district I worked at, but if we don't get out of that corrective action, then they would come in here and say, okay, well, you've tried this, now we think you need to do this.
And That's it. Thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate
sure.
it.
Al, if I could just jump in there, Mr. Hickey asked, is there ever a time, that we don't meet that? One of the things when you look back, it's participation rate in PSSA testing, I don't remember which indicator. Can you talk about that for a second? If kids do not participate in PSSAs?
Sure, so one of the indicators, not necessarily just how they do, but are they actually taking the test? Because parents have the opportunity to waive parents from taking, whether it's the Keystones or the PSSA testing. So if we don't meet a certain criteria, and I don't, off the top of my head, don't know what that percentage is, then that is an area we get flagged as well. One of the things I tell the supervisors and teachers here is, we really don't want to encourage parents one way or the other. It's really their choice. I think there's some benefits to it, regardless of the level of disability, of giving us some idea of how the student's performing, but it's really a parent decision. So we try not to have any influence on whether they waive the testing or don't, but that is one area where I know in the past we were flagged.
Okay.
Actually, legally, we can't. We have an obligation to encourage people to have their kids participate.
Anybody else? Questions?
I got a quick one. Did you say only 10 files are pulled at the state's request?
What used to be 10, now they haven't told me yet, I haven't heard that it's changed. So I'm just going off of what I've dealt with in the past. So typically it's 10 files.
Because when you think of a district the size of ours, and you think of a population of special education of the size of ours, 10 files doesn't really seem adequate. I mean, it's well within the margin of error of throwing a dart at a dartboard.
Mm-hmm.
You could get 10, it's not really a good cross composition of both the district and or the population. So the question I suppose I'm pondering is, after this is all completed, would you or your department look at this and evaluate, did they pick the right 10 files, or could we do something better? Do you do some sort of an internal critique of how the department is, beyond what the state does, but kind of in that same line, but perhaps maybe broader?
Well, I don't necessarily say I evaluate all aspects like they do for cyclical monitoring on a daily basis, but I know, part of the role of the supervisor and what I kind of evaluate them on is, they review every IEP when it's complete. So we really shouldn't be approving or accepting any IEPs that have any issues with goals, students not making progress. So those are things that the supervisors in my department are always looking for in terms of the IEPs. LOE percentage, students not participating in tests, we get that data every year, and every year we sit down and kind of figure out, okay, how can we improve, whether it's LRE, students taking tests. So we're constantly at the end of every year when we get that data, kind of figuring out ways to make improvements in some of those areas.
And that seminar that you held here that you referenced was, I think, helpful in some respects. And I know for some parents, they were expecting something different. Perhaps they've been waiting for progress for years, or perhaps they don't see enough progress in their child for years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a good first step to cover a lot of ground.
You're talking about the webinar or the CPAC?
The CPAC,
Okay.
yeah. I thought that was good. And it also dovetailed in with letters and Aspire. So once again, it seems to be a little bit more integrated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Stone?
Yeah, with the CPAC, at what level of control beyond input do the parents have? Will
Right now, or what ideally?
Ideally, and what is their understanding of what their level of control is on the outcome of,
Ideally, a CPAC, I look at it as like a PTO at a school. You might partner with the principal or the school itself. My interactions is, if you have an elected board, if you want to call them, of CPAC, in my history, I would meet with them once a month, as they would talk to parents, and then we'd have discussions about issues or concerns that they're hearing. They would have monthly meetings, which I would be invited to. If they wanted speakers, or if they heard parents wanted information, I would kind of work with them to get speakers in, or if they wanted me to present on something, or kind of, address certain things. It's kind of, that's how it's run. They're in charge of the agenda. And it's just a partnership. They really are, they take the lead on it. And if they need my support in finding a speaker or space or whatever that might be, that's kind of typically how I see them run. With me doing the agenda, I'm kind of basing it on what I hear from some parents, but not everyone, and maybe it's a little more difficult for me to do an agenda for a CPAC group when I might not be hearing from all the parents, so it's a little difficult.
So I assume that they're going to look at setting goals for their group as
Correct.
well. And probably setting recommendations to administration.
Mhm.
And you'll have to take those recommendations and determine whether they're feasible or not.
Sure.
So they understand that that's
That would be part of the foundation here, is understanding, it is an open dialogue.
right.
There's some things that we may be able to implement, some things I may disagree with them on. And hopefully, if you have a strong relationship with that organization, they understand that there's going to be disagreements when it comes to special education, and you kind of work together to kind of navigate through them.
Would you be the only representative to these monthly meetings, or you'll have some
I
of your
hope not,
staff?
yeah, so myself. No, it's usually myself and we rotate, but basically most of the supervisors.
Okay, great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Overman.
Thank you.
Dr. Overman.
The comprehensive plan, as you all know, we're working on that. That is a plan that is a shared vision of where the district will be, hopefully by 2029. It's inherently difficult to do because it's very hard to, as Al just pointed out, what the world was like in 2020. No one could foresee some of the changes that are coming. So this plan is looking ahead from beginning July 1 of 2026 through 2029. I have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is I have an error on here. Along the very bottom, the plan submitted, it needs to be submitted. This is the bad news, that there's a mistake, but it's actually good news because it doesn't need to be submitted until March 31st. So we have extra time. So if we can stick to the calendar that's shown up there, we'll be in a good place. And that gives us extra time to look at it. And so where we are right now, we've done the first part. We've used the same three framework settings, the priority statements of classroom, community, and culture. We've had 5 meetings so far. Our next meeting is November 11th. That's in person. We have a broad stakeholder group. We have teachers, we have parents, we have staff members, we have board members. We have Mrs. Stone in this corner. And what we've been doing is so far, only because of the timing of the school year, we've been meeting by Zoom, but the rest of the meetings will be taking place in person. We've managed to come up with priorities and goals. And now what we have to do next is do a needs assessment, which is based on the data, some of the data that Tammy was talking about, guidance plans, student performance data. And from that, we develop action steps. So knowing where we would like to be, looking at our current data, we determine how are we going to get where we want to be based on what we're currently doing, if that makes sense. What changes can we make? They want us to demonstrate ways that we're going to improve leadership, teaching and learning, and a framework for goal setting, action plans, assessing of needs, and how we're going to foster the community. So that being said, we'd like to get it into the board's hands and the community all at the same time, and that'll happen in January. That means that a draft, given the holiday break, right after the holiday break, after we return, we'll probably have the draft plan ready for the committee to look at, and then we release it for board comment or public comment. There's a 28-day cycle in there. We're going to present it at the Ed Committee meeting on January 29th. That's again for the community. That'll be a more finalized version. And then the board will approve it at the February 19th meeting. So we have time. We have time to look at it. Any questions? Oh, questions? Mrs. Ake?
I'm a little concerned with the timeline based on the the timeline, was it a special ed document we did in the spring? I can't remember what it was, but I felt like, that at that point, I felt like, okay, it was presented to at the education committee meeting, and then there wasn't really time to work with any feedback before we had to vote on it. And I see that happening again.
Well, if you go back, can you go back a slide? So if it is in the posted for public review, which doesn't mean that you won't see it prior to January 22nd, there's a whole 28 days until it's presented at the education committee meeting, and then another month.
No, January 22nd to January 29th is 7 days.
It's going to be presented at the education committee. It's not for approval or anything like that.
Right, so if we have feedback at the education committee,
We have until February 19th to make that.
but there's not another education meeting to say, hey, this is the feedback that we had and this is what we've done to change it. That's my concern.
We could actually, as a plan that doesn't have to be submitted till March 31st, we could have an approval for the March
Yeah.
meeting.
Can we do that?
And those timelines are that 28 days is predicated by the state.
Yeah, this PDP.
We don't pick that timeline. There's nothing that says we can't do anything longer than that. We
Right, that's
can't
what
do
we're
anything
asking
shorter.
for. Or that's what, I'm asking for something longer, I suppose. So if we could do it so that we could have at the February education meeting, have some time for, if there were any changes to
Review it
discuss
again.
them and then vote on it in March. Is that
February,
workable?
that would be February 26th. And then the board meeting would be March 19th. That would give you time. Now, the question becomes, if it's between the 19th of the education committee meeting and the board meeting in March, it's not going to give you a lot of time to make changes after that. Because now you're on March 19th, you have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days. Well, if you take out, say you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, working days.
We would have time so it would be presented on January 29th at the education committee meeting. And then the February 22nd, you said? I don't have the dates in front of me, but that education meeting, you'd say, hey, here are some of the changes that we made. And then we'd have until March 19th. And then we'd have until the March board meeting. So that's another 3 weeks.
Correct. But what I'm saying is if any changes come then.
But yeah,
then the
understandable,
turnaround
but that's a
time-
much better situation than we have essentially 6 weeks.
Okay.
That would be, thank you.
Any other questions? So Nina, you're on the committee, right?
Yeah, I am as well as Ann.
Yes.
Ann is on a different group. We're broken down into subgroups based on the 3 groups in the very beginning. You see classroom, community, and culture. So I'm on the community group. I don't remember what group Ann is on.
So
Ann? Are you there, Ann?
The classroom group.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, the classroom group.
There you go.
Well, thank you both for doing that. Glad you're putting the time in and effort.
It's nice that we have, smaller groups that we can throw these ideas around.
All right, any more questions? We can move on, thank you.
Okay, Middlebox Institute of Technology, this is just a broad overview of a program that I know is near and dear to the hearts of especially Mr. Hickey and Ms. Horner, serving as board representatives. But as you know, Middlebox Institute of Technology, a comprehensive technical education program located in Warwick Township in Jamison, Pennsylvania. I believe the campus is about 58 acres. It's a beautiful campus. And it serves four sending school districts. So beyond Council Rock, it also serves the needs of Centennial, New Hope, Solebury, and Central Bucks. So in terms of its mission, Middlebox Institute of Technology operates as a school of choice designed for students who are seeking to enhance their educational program with a highly relevant career and technical experience. connected directly to the real world of business and industry. Over 400 business and industry advisors review and update the school's educational program annually. The MBIT experience provides students with a blend of classroom theory, technical applications in state-of-the-art laboratories, and off-campus work-based experiences. Students then learn these skills in a way that has personal meaning and career relevance. So according to our October enrollment report, we currently have 178 students enrolled at MBIT. MBIT's day program, which is kind of their main program, if you will, serves about 900 students. They also have evening programs. Oftentimes, adults take advantage of those evening programs. So of the 900 students currently, Council Rock has 178 from both Council Rock High School North and Council Rock High School South. The way it works for our schedule, students are either in an AM session or a PM session. So essentially, they spend half the day at MBIT and the other half of the day at North or South. And then the courses are divided into levels, a level 100, a level 200 that you progress through. It's grades 10 through 12. So depending on which program you are in and which level, you may go in the AM or the PM. Council Rock does provide transportation to MBIT, and currently there are, I think there's actually 22 program offerings, 21 or 22 program offerings, and they're in 5 different kind of broad cluster areas in terms of career experiences. So in terms of, kind of what we do to make sure that the word is out for MBIT, any student that has completed 8th grade, even though it's a 10th through 12th grade program, is eligible for a shadowing experience at MBIT. So I know Dr. Covell, who's the executive director, very much enjoys having students shadow just to follow another student in the day and some programs that they are potentially going to be enrolled in. You have the opportunity to speak to other students, your peers, learn about what that program looks like in action, speak to the teachers. And oftentimes those teachers are actually experts in that given trade as well. In addition to the shadowing opportunity, every spring at both high schools, we will have a dedicated assembly for 9th graders about MBIT, MBIT representatives, whether that's an administrator or guidance counselor from MBIT. About a 50-minute program, just go over all the offerings and what that would look like. Because then the 9th graders, you would be eligible in 10th grade when you start to think about program planning. And then, last thing I just want to mention, this was a big date, November 20th, they have an open house at MBIT, 6 to 8, and again, great opportunity to engage with the stakeholders at MBIT and see what that school entity really looks like. These happen to be, of those 21 or 22 programs, these are our current most popular programs in terms of the 178 students who are enrolled: cosmetology, welding, building trades, HVAC, automotive technology, electrical technology. Many of these programs, you will receive a certification, kind of credentialed after you complete these programs. There's a NOCME test at the end, which is kind of the high stakes test to make sure that you have achieved your goals and you have successfully completed that program. A number of these programs also have certification hours associated with it. So for example, if you were going to complete the cosmetology program, you need X amount of hours in a salon or actually practicing the trade to receive that level of certification. And then if you want to learn more about MBIT, they have a very good monthly newsletter and certainly their website, but it is an outstanding comprehensive technical education program that a number of our students take advantage of. And if you are interested as a community member, that November 20th open house, I think would certainly be informative and insightful.
Ms. Stone?
So you just listed the top 6? So there was culinary and so on.
Yeah, we have students in all.
I remember the lemon
Yep.
cake that we all got, that was so good, so I know they had cooking classes.
And that would vary from year to year in terms of trends and which programs.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Actually, I know we talk about this in Finance Committee, but, so we pay as a district per student that attends, that's enrolled in a program, correct?
The short answer is yes. Tony would have to tell you how it's a rolling payment.
Right.
Based on the students, and then it gets kind of balanced out at the end of each year. So we know we have more students this year at 178 than we did last year. I don't know the exact number from last year. And with MBIT, one of the challenges there for Dr. Covell is the space. We have, as Al said, about 900 students there. And Mr. Hickey and Ms. Warner can speak well to this too. There's more, the school is generating more interest than space that's available. And one of the highlights we've celebrated with MBIT, the new welding lab, and so there are a lot of good things going on.
Just as a side note, I actually wanted to bring it up at our board meeting, but forgot about it. It's not in effect yet, but like, when we talk about our fund balance and things like that, because we're a consortium there, and it's funded by the sending schools, there is no fund balance. So this impasse that's going on with the budget, it doesn't have an effect yet as long as the sending districts are sending their payments to MBIT on time. But depending on how long it drags on, it could become an issue because they can't borrow or take money out of their fund balance to pay for these programs. I'm going to say it maybe $50,000 they might have in their fund balance from year to year. They only operate out of a $13 million budget, and a lot of their money comes in the form of Perkins grants or loans or grants. Something to just keep an eye on. It could become an issue if this extends, I'll say beyond the first of the year. So hopefully, the state will figure out their funding and it doesn't become an issue. But like you said, the biggest problem is space. It's becoming more and more popular among all the districts, and like you said, you did a very good job of describing what happens there. And like I said, it's a pretty interesting place. If you ever want to go see it, take a tour or whatever. The facilities are really top notch, and they keep on making improvements to them. So.
Just out of curiosity, who funded the school? Because now we provide, every district provides the expense per student, but somebody must have funded the program to start, like the facilities and the organization and so on. Do you know?
No, I don't know. I mean, from my recollection of it, it's always been funded by the sending schools, and all the tech schools are. There's one in Lower Bucks and there's one in Upper Bucks as well, and it's funded based on percentages of the sending schools. And it's an odd formula, like you said, that they use to pay. It's like a rolling average, but then there's like an actual average, and Ann might even understand it better than I do, where it's not necessarily based on your number this year, it's based on your 3-year rolling average. So.
No, I'm talking about fixed cost, not variable cost. I'm not talking about the cost per student that we pay, but say, do they own the building? How do they build the labs? They need money to do all this, right?
I don't know how it originated, but I don't want to misspeak, but I think it was in the 1960s when the CTEs or vocational schools, when multiple districts sent to one location, and that is how we ended up in Bucks County with Upper, Middle, and Lower Bucks. Where that funding came from, I would have to do the research on that to tell you. And I would have to believe somewhere along the way that the sending districts contributed to make that happen. And as Mr. Hickey said, much of their operating costs, it comes from Perkins grants. So, but how it originated, I don't have a good answer for that, but I believe it was in the 1960s or so. But I have to believe, and I'm saying this without having researched it, that the sending schools had to provide basically the seed money to build that building and put the air conditioning and heating unit in and all those things.
So if they need major construction, then it goes back to all the districts to borrow for capital.
Oh, they have they have a capital expenditure and a plan of what they're doing. Like right now, they have to replace 52 HVAC units on the roof at some point. So that's all budgeted and planned, and it goes through the districts. One of the things they do now is when they meet now with the sending districts, they involve the superintendents and the business managers from each district. So they're more in tune of exactly what's going on. Like a couple years ago, we had a glitch, and they knew about it before I did, with the payments that were going to the school through the district. So like I said, that's one good thing. There's a lot better communication now between the districts. And like I said, we have there's actually a superintendent who sits on the board and goes to all the meetings, and it's actually Dr. Lentz right now from New Hope Salisbury. And like I said, so he's communicating with all the other superintendents and BAs, and so that part of it's really good. So you minimize the surprises.
And the addition with what Mark Covell has done by looping in the business administrators has been a real benefit, because we track every month the money. Talked about the chillers or the HVAC units. They have the same challenges that we do in any of our buildings. Like right now, I know their electrical system is antiquated. Right, they have a 1950s or 60s some switches in that building, and electricity. It's gonna, if not now, it will soon be a challenge for them. They get sometimes roof leaks like we do. They had to come up with money to fix the front facade and to build that welding lab. So they face the same challenges we do. I think the good news is the variety of programs they offer, the kids that are interested in going there, and I think MBIT is on the map.
Great program.
Great. Any more questions? Should we move on? So next we have the educational audit discussion, and I know Mr. Roosevelt requested that, so we will have an open discussion. But speaking for myself, I would like to understand more of what you had in mind asking for that, because it can be so broad, because we can audit so many different areas. So do you have something specific in mind?
Yeah, I agree. It is kind of broad. There are a lot of areas that can be done, but starting with the overview of there's always something that we can do better. And I think just speaking individually, since this was my idea, I do agree that this is something that we should ask the educators and the directors what has been done in the past. I think a companion to what we heard about the state's audit of special education would be interesting, especially to go a step further beyond just 10 files. Let's open that up and look a little bit more completely. I think also, as well as regular education, we should dive in deeper. There's always been, at least for the 4 years that I've been on this board, there's always been a rating system on a variety of different publishers that come out. That, U.S. News and World Reports was a recent one, but it goes on and on. Niche is another. There's a lot of these, and I think that the criteria that they evaluate these schools on is different from the way Council Rock would evaluate it. And some of them aren't really applicable to a public school. A public school system is the responsibility to educate the children of the community that come here that don't find private school. So there's certain factors where your composition of your student body is going to be similar to the composition of the public. So putting those together, which one was it? One of them, I think, degraded the score for the school based upon how many students went to armed service, which seems a little interesting. And so I think that this is an opportunity where, you know, parents and prospective people moving into the community may look at some of these reports to try to figure out, where should I move, right? Should I go to this district? Should I go to that district? Should we go to the other district? It's a huge factor in real estate values. So I think that it's an opportunity for us as a district to look at what we do well and what we need to improve on. And I think that it's an opportunity for the district to evaluate what are the criteria that we feel is important to evaluate ourselves upon. And then diving in a little bit deeper, you've got, why is it that the northern middle school and high school typically trend higher than the southern middle school and high school? Where does this come from? What is it related to? So that's just sort of a broad overview. I'd like to hear the experience that people that have been in this district for a lot longer than all of us board members have been in it, what their experience with audits and how we can do it. I have a little bit of an RFP from an area district that is doing this presently. So that was sort of an interesting guideline. I've kind of folded to the appropriate page and blocked off some things. I don't think that we need to compare and contrast to any particular neighboring district, but it's interesting for this discussion item. But I think generally, we all have come on this board because we're interested in students. We're interested in student education. We want to try to improve things. I would hope that all of the administrators and the teachers are here because, and I expect they are, because they find personal fulfillment by getting a young mind to open up and finally get it. I imagine it's very similar to experiences that I've had with Boy Scouts, where you're helping a bunch of scouts and then dialing into the ones that need a little bit of extra help. And when they finally get it, the light goes on in their eyes, their face changes, it's wonderful. It really helps volunteering come around and provide meaning. And I think that that's true of the 9 of us around this table or on the board, that when you can find that student impact that has been reached, it's really, really rewarding. And I imagine it's the same for all the administrators and the educators and the teachers. So I think that we all want our students, want the best of every student that's here. And an audit would be interesting to get a third-party view to come in to find out what is unique about Council Rock, what the district does really well, and maybe some areas where we can do better at. And I would imagine everybody around this table supports that idea to improve education and to look back and reflect upon ourselves and figure out how we can improve. So that's my general, quick sort of idea of what I'm looking for. But I'd also like to hear from the educators, as well as many of you that feel comfortable talking about it, what we can do in this. And then I'm happy to read some areas that I thought were important from an RFP, which I don't really agree with all of it, but I think that at least it's a starting point.
So if I could just jump in, this topic came up at the last education committee meeting and then at the board meeting, and I said, I think we would all agree that we're always looking for continuous improvement. We're always looking to reflect. I mean, Al gave the example of the special ed audit that takes place every 6 years, but we're doing that all the time. At the last meeting, I gave examples of the EL audit. You know, we get a financial audit every year. I gave an example of the technology audit. And they're all good. We always learn something from it, and I think that's what we're trying to do so we can best serve our kids. I think administratively, because we've talked about this multiple times since this came up, is you know, what's our intended outcome? Where do we want to look? Because auditing the financial department is different than doing an EWA audit. We just had the EL audit done, Nicole, at the IU, which is only a small subgroup of our teachers and our programming. We just had the SLPs, the speech pathologists, done at the IU. So, like audit is really broad, and if the board so chooses and you want us to focus on an area, we're certainly open to it. We're always looking to improve and provide the best we can for our kids. You know, there are organizations out there that do it. The one we have worked with most closely is the IU, the two examples I just used. 3 examples, including technology, speech pathologist, and the EL students. We use the IU. You know, we have the financial audit done every year, so that's a completely different scenario. We have the state police come in every year or so and they audit our buildings, right? And that's something we would talk about during an executive session. But so I think administratively we're on board. We're just trying to narrow down and ask at the will of the board, what is it you want us to look at? We're happy to go out and investigate and look, and then where does this fall on the priority list? You know, the capital projects work we're doing, the high school scheduling we're doing, the full day kindergarten stuff that we're still doing, the work that Tammy has just shared tonight, and where do you all want that to fall on the list of priorities? So, you know.
I have Ms. Stone and then Mrs. Zaki, so maybe do.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I like the idea of trying to find out, for instance, why there's a difference in some of the ratings between North and South. But I would also like to know how these different organizations rate. What are their criterias? Because, you know, can we get a handle on that? Because that's something that all parents look at and say, hey, you know, they put some value in there. Should they be valuing that? I don't know. So, and I think what we're doing here is this audit is the state doing the audit for special ed is important, and then everything that Tammy explained to us today is all new programs that are being audited, that we're auditing, and to start an outside audit while we're in the middle of making these grand changes, maybe it's a little early in the game. Maybe we wait until we get some feedback on these other programs, on how they're working. But in the meantime, maybe do some history, some looking into these different sources of rating. But you have to then find, the administration has to find someone that's available to do the work, to do all that. And we're in the middle of the comprehensive plan as well. So I think it's, you know, can we get rolling on it? Maybe we can have a group that's looking into it, but I don't know if we have the real resources to do it immediately. And then we also changed the science program is just changing as well based on the state requirements. So there's
to the steel standard.
The steel standard, so there's a huge number of things going on. I like the idea, but maybe, you know, there's a small committee that can be looking into where we could go, what we would want to audit, what would be effective.
I think there's a difference too between, I think you referenced like US News and World Reports and niche.
Yeah.
And versus, I don't know, like a special ed audit or a speech and language audit. I mean, Andrea, if I can put you on the spot, you were one of the few people we sat with 2 or 3 years ago, and we spoke with some of these organizations that we rank school districts. You want to talk about some of those
Sure, we
meetings?
recorded by niche. We sat through a presentation, and at the end of the presentation, I remember Dr. Sanko said, so this is pay to play, correct? And they said, yes. So their algorithm and how you wind up there and how you can flash it, you put it on your Redfin ad for your house. I don't know if Council Rock wants to play that game. If this board wants to spend money on that, we can certainly do that, and you know full well you will get a very highly placed niche ranking. But we kind of felt at the time, we don't even need to do that. We stand on our own merits. So marketing is a little different than auditing the quality of the program.
Absolutely.
So,
And I
You know-
think that example, they wanted $26,000 a year to put Council Rock's name, and we would get more clicks from people looking at houses in our area.
so they actually work with your Google placement, they survey the community, and they tweak the survey so that your options are within grades of good. I hate this district, they don't have that option. I like it, I really like it, I really, really like it, so, I don't know, it's a great business, I wish I had thought about it.
But they're not all like that, but there are a number of them that maybe it is something to start with the comprehensive plan, the community group that I'm on, maybe that's one of the items that we look at is how these rating systems work, and then educate the public on what these mean.
And I think that's really what we're asking, like, what targets do you want us to point at? And
Yeah.
Mitch or US News and World Reports is completely different than.
But to have an understanding and explain to the public what those differences are.
Yeah, and I mean, there are companies out there, we have used, Hanover, we've used Hanover Research for work in Council Rock before. They can come in and do an audit, they can do an audit of the business office. But we already pay to have that done every year, is that something we want? I don't know, is that a desire the board wants? Is it, an audit of the current math program at the secondary level? Is that something we want? We would probably not go to US News and World Reports, we would go down a different avenue. So I think if you just point us and say to us, this is really where we want to take a laser focused look at it, we can certainly go out and get third-party independent people, including the IU or outside of the IU, to look at that. I don't know, the two Alice and Nicole and Andrea, you have anything to?
Can we maybe
Oh, I'm
go
sorry.
around and have people, because Mrs. Everyone,
I'm sorry,
maybe we can
Mrs.
hear more
That's all
about
right.
different ideas.
Just to back up a little, I won't say I don't care about the rankings, but I don't put a lot of stock in the rankings. I think Andrea's right, we can stand on our own merit. But if there's something to be found with the scores, like if you wanted to say like, okay, here are the scores at the south side of the district and here are the scores at the north side of the district, and kind of try to understand the differential there, that is something that I would be supportive of. I think that the biggest priority though, if you ask me, is the special ed program and a special ed audit. I think that's a good idea. I think this is a good time to do it. I was encouraged to hear about the cyclical monitoring. I think that's a good start, but as Mr. Roosevelt said, it's 10 files. So like, I'm not going to put a lot of credence in that one way or the other. I think a full special ed audit is what we've been hearing consistently from the community. And I think this is a good time to do it because we have a new special ed director who can really execute something based on the feedback that we get. Soon we're going to start planning for the budget for next year. So, this is a good time. We can say like, okay, let's set aside some money for whatever the special ed audit says, we need to improve in this area or that area. I looked back in my notes, I mentioned, I won't say I asked for, I'm not demanding it, but I discussed a literacy audit at the March Education Committee meeting. So this is something that's been going on for a while, and I think a full special ed audit would be really good step for the district to help Dr. Oberman kind of guide where his resources are best utilized and how are we going to budget for next year, because the budget for next year is going to be here before we know it. So to me, it seems like now is the time.
Yeah, I thought that you kind of did that over the summer, didn't you just go through like all the schools and the programs that they offer and try to make it more equitable and
I
talk to
did.
a lot of people?
I did in terms of, when I came in, I tried to prioritize at least what I was hearing from the parents and teachers. So my focus over the summer was the reading programs at the elementary school to get equity. So that was, in terms of that piece of it, that's where I spent most of my, at least my first few weeks here, and then over the summer, kind of making sure we had the programs in place, teachers were trained on them, that we had, every elementary school has the same program. So that was part of what I did coming in, sure.
I will say, since I asked for this literacy audit in March, compared to where we are with our literacy program now, it's like a world of difference. I feel a lot more comfortable. I would maybe say, like, maybe we don't need a literacy audit, but a special ed audit in general.
So, yeah, I know. I just want to also give a chance to Dr. Oberman and tell us how would you, if you think you would benefit from this audit, and also how the cyclical monitoring, would that be possibly extended in a way that we get more information out of it?
I can certainly ask PDE, if they, to Mr. Roosevelt's point about the 10 files, maybe they would, if we asked them to do a more thorough audit. That's a possibility. I've never done that before, but that's something we could look at. In terms of a full special ed audit, as Dr. Senko said, I'm always looking for ways to, any suggestions on different ways to improve or things that we need to do better. In my own experience, I'm not familiar with what an outside special ed audit would look like, but certainly, like I said, open to any type of help or suggestions that might be available, but I certainly will contact PDE about if there's a way for them to expand what they currently are planning to do as at least a beginning step or something to start with.
Do they do their own audits on top of the cyclical monitoring? Can we ask them to do an audit for us?
I can ask them. Like I said, I'm not sure, so that's something I have to get back to everybody on.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Mr. Hickey.
Yeah, I agree with both Mr. Roosevelt and Ms. Soseki on all your points. I think you make some very good ones. The issue I would say the IU or even the PDE is, like they always talk about, and Ms. Gary talked about it tonight, is standards, And we talked about, like, I don't believe in the US News and World Report and all that stuff. I don't necessarily want to just rely on standards that the state comes out with as we operate on our own. Like I would prefer to have an independent audit, and not just of special ed. You mentioned, our general ed. They would find all the things, like we're doing all this stuff now. I think if we did one now, it would work in conjunction with what the Department of Education is doing in special ed wise. And in addition, when they came in, they would find out all the things we did with our literacy programs, all the things we're doing in our math programs, and with hiring, they would say, okay, you just hired math and reading specialists. Okay, great, you're really on the ball with this, but here's where you're missing, here's where you're lacking. This is where the improvement can come. And I don't know if maybe Mr. I don't know what that audit looks like or what to ask for. So I don't know if Mr. Roosevelt could share that document so we could get an idea of what we want to see out of that audit. And in addition, what is the time it would take the administration to come, to give the time to the auditors, and also what is the cost? I have no idea what if it's one thing if an audit costs, say a couple $1,000s or something, but if it's $50,000, that's something we would have to consider as well. Do we want to make that expenditure? So like I said, I don't know if maybe we can come up with some ideas. I don't know, like I said, if you could share that document, Mr. Roosevelt, I assume they would have what the cost is. And then if we have some ideas, we could send it out to an RFP, and, if the price is reasonable, do it. I think, like you said, it's to our advantage, regardless of what any magazine or program thinks of what we're doing. So, like I said, I would be in favor as well as, like you said, like Ms. Hoseki and Mr. Roosevelt said.
I would say in terms of an audit, special ed, because it's so legally driven that, if the criteria or the background of whatever if we went this way, of what their specialty is. So I would assume if they're saying they could do a special ed audit, they have the background or knowledge to be able to.
Now, would a place like they talk about this place, Pat, would that be something that they would do, or is that part of basically the Department of Education?
I mean, that's run through, it's a branch of the Department of Education. They're really there to support the district. I know they've come in and we've used them in the past to come in and audit certain programs, whether it's our AS program or emotional support program. I don't know if they can do, what their capacity is to do a large audit.
Right, yeah, and I'm not saying I necessarily want Pat, I would almost prefer, like you said, someone independent outside of the district or the IU, but I don't know what that looks like.
I mean, I would assume that it's going to be very expensive if it's totally independent, if it's not coming from the PDE or the IU. I mean, it's going to be fairly extensive, but it would be good to find out the RFP for the other district and see when, like you were asking. But I would like to give everybody the opportunity. Is kind of like say something?
Sure. So, I mean, like all of us here, I think, we can always think about what we can do better. I'll speak with the literacy component first. It's not that I'm a yes or no at this point, but I think Ms. Oseki kind of just hit the nail when she said, a year ago when we were discussing about where our place of literacy versus where we are today, I don't know if the audit would be as beneficial now versus if we, in 2 years or 3 years, since, we have MTSS, that's been 3 years. We have the Reading Horizons, that's going on its 3rd year. We have, all the structured literacy, the Wilson training, all the PD we have in the works. I don't know if that would give a clear picture versus, let's say, in 2 years or 3 years when we kind of have an established baseline of what we're looking for. And with all the data-driven things that we're doing as well. So that's kind of my pause there for the structured literacy, but of course, this can be an ongoing discussion that we have. Regarding special education, I wasn't quite sure if this would be the time with our cyclical monitoring, but it might be. Again, I would be open to that as well. I was going to ask Dr. Oberman what his experience was with auditing, but I think you kind of already established that. My concern with having a third-party independent not only is the cost, because I think Dr. Sanko had alluded to looking at some private third-party, and it was going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and what their stake is, right? If it's an independent entity business that is generating their business and money, how is that beneficial for our district? Where, we go to the Department of Education, they are a public entity that supports public schools, and they have the knowledge and background, not only in history, but also the law behind special education, which is so heavily weighted by different things with special education law. So I kind of would, if I had to pick one or the other, because we can't do all at once, I would lean toward the special education audit. Again, I would, kind of look to Dr. Oberman and how he feels about that with his team. But again, if we can do something better. And would the IU offer a special education audit?
So yes, I just looking through old files, I think it was 2 years ago, they came in and audited our speech and language program.
Right.
So they come in, theirs is very focused though. So it wouldn't be, I don't think necessarily they'd come in and do a special ed audit. We might ask them to look at what are our math interventions. So their audits are very pinpointed to specific things. They wouldn't do a general overarching audit of everything.
Last one, would they be able to then would they be qualified to do something such as like an IEP audit?
They probably could. I don't know if I've never specifically asked them for that one, but I'm sure that falls within their
purview, yeah. It just seems so specific, focus, but it could really tell us a lot about the history of the district and currently, not only for you and your team driving us forward, but it's also a great time for you coming in, relatively new, to kind of just have a really good fresh start and understanding of where we are. So, thank you.
I think Ms. Khan hit on, the most important point, which is I would begin by asking our administrators, where they would find it most helpful to conduct an audit. And we just heard from Mr. Overman, Dr. Overman talk about, the focus. The IU did an audit, an assessment of speech and language. Could they do an assessment of IEPs? I think we've been talking in really broad strokes about an audit. I mean, I listed 5 different topics, rankings, which I don't particularly think are important, special ed, general ed, literacy, the difference in performance on test scores between North versus South. I think we would want to understand what our objectives are. What do we want to accomplish with an audit? These are time-consuming and resource-consuming endeavors. In addition to the dollar cost, there's the cost of staff time to work with an audit. And we've asked a lot of the administration with the comprehensive plan, the high school schedule, and so forth. And the other thing I would mention about special ed is Dr. Overman's been here for 5, 6.
It's about 6 months now,
6 months.
half a year.
Yeah, our new, our first ever curriculum director for special ed has been here just a bit over a year. I think some sort of audit in special ed, one that's designed by our administrators, or in consultation with our administrators, might make sense in a year or 2 years. But to Ms. Khan's point, when you make curricular changes, I don't think you expect to see a big impact in year 1. Maybe you start to see an impact in year 2. So as far as special ed is concerned, I think it's premature to talk about an audit. I think the other thing we need to do, and the last point I'll make, is we've had Dr. Barnes in here multiple times, and I think every time he comes in and speaks to us, we come away really impressed and enlightened. So I would love to hear from Dr. Barnes. If we said to him, Dr. Barnes, we're willing to set aside $30,000 to $40,000. That's a ballpark, but $30,000 to $40,000 for some sort of audit of our educational curriculum and academic programs. Where do you think it would be most useful? Where are there gaps in our data that we ought to invest in plugging? So I would start by asking our administration questions about, where might it be most useful to talk about some sort of audit. I think that would be an interesting presentation at an education committee.
Yeah, I mean, how good are we? How do you answer this question? I mean, we all want to know, right? So it'd be good for our administration to answer that question. How good are we? How do we find out? And I agree with pretty much everybody that while we're making all these changes in general education, it's probably premature to have an audit right now, but special ed is different because we are starting to make changes. So maybe we can get a better read of which direction to go and what to change. Another criteria could be if we look at placement in colleges, because a lot of our students, first of all, the graduation rates, where they go after, what kind of schools they get into. Probably we have this data in-house, right? So we're looking at like Keystone and PSSA, and we look at how we're doing there versus in the past versus other schools. So I think there's data already in-house that maybe we can use, but I wish we could do everything. I think if we have a lot of time and money and resources, we could do independent audits for everything. But it makes sense to stagger it in a way that is beneficial. So we're waiting for an answer from you, and also, how to prioritize.
So I think first, I just want to comment Ms. Conley. The first year I was superintendent, we talked about an audit. And we went out to RFP, and the business administrator at the time was Jason Harris. And without going back, I don't know exact numbers, and I don't remember the scope of work that was put on that RFP, but I somehow remember it was 6 figures. And it was not drilled down to IEPs, you know. And when we talk about special ed, if we look at the IU, I have seen the IU go in and audit an MET program or an AS program or an ES program. I don't know about IEPs, and that's a question we can ask. So that's one thing. I don't know what it will cost, but we will have to define the scope of work. The second thing that I would say is administratively, we're going to need to go out and search. I know Mr. Roosevelt said he has an RFP. We're going to have to find out. I mentioned Hanover Research. I know they do a lot of work. We've done work with them. That's a good starting spot with us. The IU is a good starting point, even if we're not using them to do it, to possibly get other organizations that can do it. You know, I know just internally, we sent Tammy to a curriculum audit workshop, I guess, last year. And I forget the name of that organization. That would be a place for us to, do you remember the name of the organization?
CMSI.
But I think we could go out and gather that stuff, and I think you'll be pleased because we have Tom Barnes on the schedule for November.
Great.
He's gonna be with us in November.
That's an acronym for Curriculum Management Solutions Incorporated.
Thank you. So we can come back to you with possible organizations, third-party vendors that would offer some kind of, and we would, again, I would ask you to help us define the scope of what does it look like if we're going to focus on special ed? Is it IEPs? Is it the process that's set forth by the state? Is it a particular program? Because, you know, I started by saying we're always looking for continuous improvement, and Hal repeated the same thing. So we're certainly open to it. We just need to kind of round it out and get the scope of the project and find out who can do that work and then what it costs. And at that point, then we'll be able to answer the question on how much time, how many people are we going to be pulling out of the classroom, what's the scope of work we're giving them, what are they going to give us in return?
Meanwhile, we can get the RFP or some information.
Yeah, I wanted to hear everybody else talk, and as I indicated, I really wanted to hear our educators talk. I agree with Mr. Tate to ask Dr. Barnes, where do we need help? What areas should we focus? And I think that would be the same with the educators. What would be most helpful for you? I think part of the component would be what is helpful to the parents to understand these rankings. I agree. My goal is not to get higher up on niche or US News and World Reports. I agree with Ms. Osecki and Mr. Tate. That's not the goal. The goal is really to figure out how we can improve our education and how the changes that the board has enacted have helped and how they're expected to help. So just reading a couple things here from the RFP with the scope that this other wants. This is not an indication of what I think is good and what we should do. We're limited, just some other ideas, and I was happy to hear ideas from around this table. Evaluation of service delivery models, staffing ratios, and resource allocation. Review compliance with IDEA, Section 504, Chapter 14, 15, 16, and other relevant laws and regulations. Access written policies, procedures, and practices related to referral, evaluation, eligibility, placement, discipline, and progress monitoring. Analyze student outcomes, including achievement, graduation, and post-secondary transitions. Financial review, maybe, but just listen here. to cover, but not limited to, budget allocations and expenditure, presumably toward education, to answer your question. I'm not really, I agree, we audit a lot of areas we could. I'm primarily, personally, and I think my constituents are interested from an educational standpoint. So budget allocations and expenditures, I believe, Mr. Funk, we spoke about this 3 years ago, perhaps, an idea of a cost per student in classes. So coming back to that, use of federal and state funds, cost effectiveness of services. This is just a list of some of the things that this other area included to help address the scope. And I think that a lot of these are interesting ideas. I agree also with Ms. Khan that we should really ask whoever this third party is to outline what experience they have. Do you have experience in special education? Do you have experience in gifted education? Do you have experience in, what is their background? Because are they just a business looking for money, or do they actually have another criteria? I think that that's important when we look at this from an educational standpoint, is what is their background?
And then you write that in the RFP.
Exactly, yeah. And have them do that. It would also be interesting to understand what their limitations are and what controls the levers of cost. But I agree to help out, evaluate where some resources should be directed to, whether it's regular education, special education, or to your point, gifted is included in that, right? That would be helpful to understand. And I think that, unfortunately, the community just looks at the headline and the ranking number, and they don't dive deeper to understand what contributes to that. So perhaps this district can do some of it, but addressing where these ranking numbers come into play and what we're doing really well. Maybe it's a multi-year thing, similar to the demographics that this district has done, to understand what are changes that the board and the administration have done have contributed to increased education, and maybe what areas we need to look more at. There's a lot, but I don't want this to be, quote, my audit. I think that this should be responsive, primarily what the educators think the district could need, and also what the community feels we could need. But at the end, the product should be very helpful to encourage and further the product of a school, which is the education of the kids. That's the product that a school does, is produce educated kids. And to understand what level of the education that comes out of our, widget manufacturing would be helpful, in what areas we could further on. I'm sure the community has some other ideas, and I welcome the idea of finding out what these organizations are, what they can do, what they can't do, what community thinks we should do, special education, general education, how much or how little this influences the cost. And ultimately, maybe we put this out to RFP and we realize this isn't helpful. Council Rock can do this on our own and produce a product that addresses that, pulls in different audits. I don't know. I just think it would be helpful for the community, and helpful for the educators, and helpful for the kids to figure out where we do well, what we need to improve upon, how we can improve the education of our students, and allow Council Rock to shine more.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that. We have to be explicit in defining the scope. Just one of the things you said there, I think about our special education department, said something about cost. We know we spend about $51,000 per special ed student to education. If you distill that and break that down even further, Al, if we go to, we're spending about $51,000 per student to educate a special ed student.
Average, yeah.
Right? That's just across the continuum. And we have everything from, learning support students that have challenges with math and reading, some with just speech and language. And then we have MDS students that require special care, special equipment. So if you pare it down, you take that 51,000 per student number, if you go and peel back the next layer on the onion, I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot.
Sure.
What's a guess if we were to say, what do we spend on our MDS kids per year?
You know, just with the staffing and the equipment, could be 130, 140 per student in that program compared to, you know, a student with maybe a math or learning disability of reading might be, you know, 20, 25, 30, depending on. So there's quite a range there based on the level of need of the student.
And that's why it's hard to say, what do you do for, each student is unique. And so, yeah, so I think what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, we will go out and find third-party vendors that could offer something like we're asking for. And if we end up going to RFP, we'll have Tom Barnes here at the November meeting. If we end up going to RFP, one of the conditions will be that they have to have a level of expertise and experience in special education. I can't sit here and tell you I know every company that does that, but we can certainly do some homework on it.
I was just discussing with Nikki, so we said that we can revisit this at the next education committee meeting, and during our prep meeting, we can discuss more extensively with the administration and get more of the ideas of how to get there. So I wouldn't necessarily jump in any direction now. I think we need to discuss it further and clarify more which way we want to go. But I think Ms. Stone wanted to say something.
I just think we're a long way off from an RFP because we don't know what the scope of work would be. And I think I like Ed's idea of working with Tom Barnes, getting a little more information there. Working with Al, once you're going through this cyclical audit, to find out during that audit where our weak points are. Maybe you can come up with, hey, I think we need to audit this. And, you know, that can give us some guidance over the next few months during that audit. But I think we're between that and maybe working with Tom Barnes, maybe at that point, then we can talk about our RFP, which I think is quite a distance away. But that's...
Sorry, I just, a couple things. I don't think that the cyclical monitoring is going to tell us anything we don't already know. Maybe it will, but I kind of think we kind of know what the cyclical monitoring is going to tell us. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that one thing that would be interesting to me when we do talk about an RFP or talk about, because I don't think that we're that far away from it. I kind of view it differently than Ms. Stone. But always, and I remember talking about this when we first met, Dr. Oberman, always I think we should be comparing ourselves to the best districts in the state, you know, not necessarily just the 13 districts in Bucks County. So one thing that I would be curious about, and maybe could be something that we could find in the process of this audit, is not just the minimums, and I think Mr. Hickey was alluding to this too, like the IU or PDE, they're going to compare us, and that's what the cyclical monitoring is going to do. It's going to say like, okay, are you meeting these minimums? Okay, I want to know what the best districts are doing, because, and PDE might not know that, you know, or Bucks IU wouldn't know that. So that's something that would be interesting and important to me when we're looking at an RFP is how familiar are you with who's doing this the best, and what can we do how can we think outside the box to do it the best also? Because I think, you know, we can deliver one of the best special ed curriculums in the state. I think we can. We have awesome teachers who are really invested. So, you know, how do we do that?
And I think it's what metrics do you want to use to determine what's best, right? So if you're talking about the U.S. News and World Reports, that's going to be a different metric. And I'm just using that by way of example than, I don't know, a reading curriculum in a school. So again, that goes back, I think, to the scope of work. We have to be laser focused on what we want, what we're looking for.
Mr. Hickey?
Yeah, just a question that popped into my mind. It kind of relates to the audit a little bit, but that's more specific of necessarily what has to do with what the PD is coming in to do. Do they monitor our settlements? Do they come in and say?
They don't.
So any settlement, they don't have an opinion one way or the other?
No, I'm not even sure I'm not even sure that's something that's tracked.
Okay. Just curious as to, you know, it's a topic that's always discussed as far as settlements in-house, you know, so.
Go ahead.
Sorry. But now Mr. Hickey reminds me that, maybe that would be a good place to start. We say, like, let's look at the data where are we falling down? Let's look at where are the settlements? And maybe that's a good area to say, okay, well, these are the areas that we should audit.
I didn't want to say, this is what I want, you know what I mean? I figured I'd ask the question the other way.
All right, that's very good discussion, and we will continue for sure. Can we, because it's almost 10 o'clock, can we move on?
Sure, so our agenda for the November 20th Education Committee meeting, we have the data review that we spoke about several times this evening related to PSA, Keystone, AP, and TSS results. Dr. Barnes will be joining us for that. We'll have, of course, our monthly special education update. Full day kindergarten, we'll be able to share some great information and feedback related to how that's going in our buildings. The elementary report card, it's been a few months since we brought up that topic, and there's some exciting work that we'd like to share and get some feedback on. And then the high school schedule, this month we'll have an update, and then the 2026-27 district calendar will be presented, and I just added the August session that we'll be revisiting that evening as well.
Before we close and move on, Al, I know we had a couple parent questions about the 26-27 calendar. Can you just give a quick overview of?
Yeah, I think we're kind of following our typical timeframe. So if we present this next month, so I'll have a draft, and then it will be up for board approval, hopefully the following month. And hopefully that's in parents' hands early enough for making plans for the 26-27 year. Calendar issues, as you know, because we've had this conversation a number of times. No right or wrong answers. Do you start school before Labor Day? Do you start school after Labor Day? Do you have a 3-day spring break? Do you have a 5-day spring break? How late in June do you go? And of course, then there are other things that we are required or mandated in terms of teacher contract, how many days, number of student days, and things of that nature. Last year, we had a number of revisions to the contract. We're hoping to try to avoid that. So many people have looked at the draft that you will see at the next Education Committee meeting, and hopefully we'll have some level of consensus that this is a good calendar moving forward the following month for approval.
But graduation won't move.
So graduation, you'll typically make a final decision on graduation in April board meeting. Because, yeah, obviously we want to see what the weather brings in the winter and things of that nature. And then you have flexible instructional days, so a lot of variables contribute to that.
Thank you. Public comment, would you like to say something?
Yes, I was at last month's board meeting, and I talked to Ms. Khan after the meeting briefly, and I raised some concerns that I had about AI. And I wanted to follow up with that, and I actually went and did some work, and I have printouts. I sent it via email to Ms. Khan, but my concerns are, first and foremost, policy on AI as was presented and discussed is not policy. It's just a thought. Secondly, the idea that a grad student is an expert on AI and can guide the district is an overstatement. And if the student is using the district for any research purposes whatsoever, all of the parents of all of the students need to be informed and give their consent to such, This is a standard institutional review board requirement, and you all need to be aware of that. Thirdly, AI does not actively seek personal data, and there are mechanisms to protect user privacy in any tool if that is indeed the concern as was raised in last month. AI can and often does collect anything that is written by a student or teacher using the platform, and that's a bigger issue. Universities are actively engaged in AI policies and use both for instruction and education. And I'm not sure that the district's activities are setting students up for success after graduation. Universities are expecting students to have experience with basic prompt scripting and the use of commercially available platforms such as ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, etc. With the above comments, I'm also concerned that the district may be potentially spending money on a closed AI application that may not help and may potentially create avenues for abuse without a clear-cut AI policy. I've put together a bunch of resources regarding East Penn has a truly well-thought-out AI policy. They admit it isn't perfect. They did it last year. I've also put in MIT's AI policy and compared that to the University of Pennsylvania and Cornell, who I happen to be familiar with, and the AI policies are much more clear-cut at Penn and Cornell than they are at MIT. There are also resources. East Penn is with Penn State Lehigh Valley. They now have a course they are offering for educators to help them understand how to use AI. The University of Pennsylvania just got a huge grant from Google, and they're going to be giving this money to schools in Pennsylvania and New Jersey to help them with this issue as well. And I also put in a link in this to a there is a whole social implication around AI, and students need to understand data privacy, not just in AI, but in everything electronic. And there was actually a group out there regarding student electronic data privacy, and I put that in here as well. And I think these are resources that the community can benefit from accessing. They're free. They may open the door for greater collaboration with other groups. But I take your point wholeheartedly. We need to be looking for what the best are doing and not necessarily saying good is good enough. If we can copy and paste, I would much rather do that, and I would much rather save us a lot of heartburn. And I just came back from a session up at Cornell with the professors who are changing how they're teaching because of AI. And I included an article in here on that as well. And I think it's really important that we need to understand how everything is happening, because I want our students to be set up for success. AI is not the real way.
Thank you so much. This is very helpful information. We would like to talk to you after the meeting.
And I'll share what I did.
Do you mind stating your name and your township?
Sure, I'm with Wrightstown. My name is Susan Day.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, we're adjourned.